Story 1. My wife wanted to be the surrogate for her rich boss. I warned her not do it, but she did it anyways, saying, "It's my body, my choice." Now she and her family is begging me. But I am clear, not my baby, not my problem. Let me tell you how my entire world got flipped like a goddamn pancake on a Tuesday night in October. My name's Grant Walker, and up until that moment I thought I had a pretty decent handle on my life. Sure, the mortgage was kicking my ass. The kids were driving me nuts with their constant need for new sneakers that cost more than my first car, and my job at the accounting firm wasn't exactly setting my soul on fire. But hey, that's middle-class America for you, right? We're all just treading water, hoping we don't drown before retirement. I was sprawled on our beat-up leather couch. The one we'd bought from a garage sale 3 years ago because we couldn't afford the fancy sectional Melissa had been eyeing at Pottery Barn, flipping through Netflix like it was my part-time job. You know how it is. Scroll for 20 minutes, watch nothing, repeat until bedtime. The kids were finally asleep after what fun. I felt like a 3-hour negotiation about why they couldn't have ice cream for dinner. And for once, the house was quiet enough that I could actually hear myself think. Melissa walked into the living room with that weird smile she gets when she's about to tell me she bought something expensive without asking. You married folks know the look. It's somewhere between, "Please don't be mad and I'm about to ruin your day." She popped down next to me, which should have been my first red flag because usually she sits on the opposite end of the couch, scrolling through her phone, liking Instagram posts of her high school friends pretending their lives are perfect. So she said, and that's when I knew I was screwed. Nobody starts a conversation with "so" when they're about to tell you something good. So is the opening act for bad news. So is what comes right before the car needs new brakes or your mother's coming to stay for a month. I muted the TV, some crime show where they solve murders in exactly 42 minutes, which is about as realistic as my chances of ever owning a boat, and turned to look at her. "What's up, babe?" I asked because despite being married for 8 years, I still hadn't learned to just keep my mouth shut and pretend to be asleep. That's when she dropped it. Just like that. No warning, no build-up, no "honey, we need to talk." She just looked at me with those big brown eyes that had gotten me into this mess in the first place and said, "I'm going to be a surrogate for my boss, Mr. Whitmore." I swear to God, time stopped. You know that moment in movies when everything goes silent and the camera zooms in on the protagonist's face? That was me. Except instead of dramatic music, all I could hear was the neighbor's dog barking at absolutely nothing like dogs do when they want to remind you that life is chaos. At first, I laughed. I actually laughed because what else do you do when your wife tells you she's planning to carry another man's baby? Like she's announcing she's thinking about taking up yoga. "Good one, Mel," I said, reaching for the remote. "What are we watching?" But she didn't laugh back. She just sat there with that serious expression she usually reserves for parent-teacher conferences and conversations about our credit card debt. That's when it hit me. She wasn't joking. This wasn't some weird attempt at humor. My wife, the mother of my 3 children, the woman who complained when I left dishes in the sink overnight, was seriously telling me she wanted to get knocked up by her boss. "Melissa," I said slowly like I was talking to one of our kids after they'd done something spectacularly stupid, "please tell me you're kidding." She shook her head, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You know that feeling when you're on a roller coaster and you hit the big drop? That moment when your brain catches up to what's happening and realizes you're completely screwed. Yeah, that his wife can't have children. She continued like this was a perfectly normal conversation. They've been trying for years. Vivian's had 3 miscarriages and the doctors say it's not safe for her to keep trying. Charles asked me last week if I'd consider it, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Charles, she called him Charles, not Mr. Whitmore. When had that started? And more importantly, when had my wife started having private conversations with her boss about his reproductive plans? "Melissa, no." The words came out sharper than I intended. But hell, she just told me she wanted to carry another man's child. I think a little sharpness was warranted. This isn't some small favor. This isn't like watching their dog while they go on vacation. This will destroy us. She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Grant, it's not like I'm having an affair. It's a medical procedure. I'm helping them have a family. You're helping yourself have a closer relationship with your boss. I shot back because let's be real here. Melissa had always been a little too eager to please authority figures, a little too concerned with what people thought of her. In high school, she was the girl who stayed after class to wash the chalkboards. In college, she was the one organizing study groups for professors who probably didn't even know her name. And now, at 32, she was offering to carry her boss's baby because she thought it would make her indispensable. "That's not what this is about," she said. But her voice had that defensive edge that told me I'd hit the nail on the head. "Charles and Vivian are good people. They deserve to have a family. What about our family?" I asked, gesturing around our living room with its mismatched furniture and crayon marks on the walls. "What about our kids? What about us?" She looked at me like I just suggested we sacrifice a goat in the backyard. "This doesn't have anything to do with us. It's my body, Grant, my choice. I don't need your permission." And there it was, the line in the sand. The moment when I realized that somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being a team and started being two people who happened to live in the same house and split the electric bill. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a rubber band around my ribs and was slowly twisting it. "Melissa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "if you do this, it will destroy our marriage. You understand that, right?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she was starting to get it. Maybe she was realizing that carrying another man's baby wasn't exactly the kind of thing you could just add to your weekend to-do list. Right between grocery shopping and soccer practice, but then she smiled, and it wasn't the warm smile I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. It was cold, calculated, like she'd already made up her mind and was just going through the motions of pretending to care about my opinion. "Then maybe," she said, standing up and smoothing down her yoga pants, "you should rethink what being a husband means." And just like that, she walked out of the room, leaving me sitting there with the muted TV and the crushing realization that my marriage had just died. Even though neither of us was ready to admit it yet. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I learned that sometimes the person you love most in the world can become a complete stranger without ever leaving the room. You'd think after dropping a nuclear bomb on our marriage, Melissa might have taken a step back to consider the radioactive fallout. But nope, that would have required actual self-awareness. And apparently, my wife had checked that particular skill at the door when she decided to play baby factory for her boss. The next few days were like living in some twisted version of Groundhog Day, except instead of Bill Murray trying to win over Andy McDowell, I was stuck trying to talk sense into a woman who'd apparently lost her damn mind. Every morning, I'd wake up thinking maybe the whole thing had been a nightmare brought on by too much leftover pizza. But there she'd be, humming while she made coffee, acting like she hadn't just announced her plans to destroy our family with the casual enthusiasm of someone discussing their weekend gardening plans. "Melissa, I'd start because I'm nothing if not persistent. Some might say stupidly optimistic. We need to talk about this surrogate thing." She'd give me this patronizing smile that made me want to throw my coffee mug against the wall. "Grant, I've made up my mind. Charles and Vivian really need this. Charles and Vivian. Always Charles and Vivian. Like they were the royal family or something. Never mind that Charles was just another corporate suit who'd probably stepped on a dozen people climbing his way up the ladder. And Vivian was one of those society-wise who spent more on handbags than most people made in a year. But sure, let's upend our entire life because they couldn't figure out how to make a baby the old-fashioned way. I tried every angle I could think of. The practical angle. "Mel, you know how miserable you were when you were pregnant with Emma. You couldn't keep anything down for 3 months and your back was killing you the entire time." The emotional angle. What are the kids going to think when mommy's walking around with someone else's baby? The financial angle. They're not exactly paying you enough to cover the medical bills, let alone compensation for 9 months of your life, but nothing stuck. She had an answer for everything, delivered with the kind of self-righteous certainty that probably started wars back in the day. She'd help with childcare costs. She'd explain to the kids that she was helping a family. She was doing this out of the goodness of her heart, not for money. Although, let's be real, the 25 grand Charles was offering didn't exactly hurt her enthusiasm. Then the flying monkey showed up. First, it was her sister Clara because of course it was. Clara had always been jealous of Melissa, jealous of her job, her house, her kids, probably even her split ends, if we're being honest. So naturally, when Melissa called to share her brilliant plan, Clara jumped on the supportive sister bandwagon like she was running for political office. The call came on a Thursday night while I was helping Jake with his math homework, trying to remember why algebra was supposed to be important when you grow up to be an accountant who spends his days entering numbers into spreadsheets that nobody reads. Grant Clara's voice had that fake sweet tone she used when she was about to stick a knife between your shoulder blades. I just wanted to call and tell you how proud I am of Melissa. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, hoping the kids couldn't hear this conversation. Oh, yeah. And why is that, Clara? For agreeing to be a surrogate. It's such a selfless, beautiful thing to do. You should be supporting her instead of being so negative about it. Negative, right? Because apparently not wanting your wife to carry another man's baby made you the villain in this twisted fairy tale. Clara, with all due respect, this is between Melissa and me. It's really not. She's my sister, Clara interrupted, and I could practically see her getting all puffed up with righteous indignation. And what she's doing is amazing. She's giving the gift of life to people who can't have children. It's practically saintly. Saintly. Jesus Christ. You know what would be saintly, Clara? If Charles and Vivian adopted one of the thousands of kids who need homes instead of paying my wife to manufacture them a custom baby. The line went quiet for a second and I thought maybe I'd actually gotten through to her. But then she came back swinging. You're being selfish, Grant. This isn't about you, it's about helping people. And Melissa has a big enough heart to do it. Maybe you should try having a little compassion. I wanted to tell Clara exactly where she could stick her compassion. But Jake was sitting right there chewing on his pencil eraser and probably absorbing every word of this train wreck. So instead, I just said, "Thanks for the call, Clara. I'll keep that in mind," and hung up. But Clara was just the opening act. The real headliner came that Sunday after church because, of course, this conversation had to happen after church, where everyone was supposed to be feeling all holy and charitable. Melissa's mother, Joanne, cornered me in the parking lot while Melissa was inside getting the kids from Sunday school. Joanne was one of those women who'd perfected the art of passive-aggressive warfare, who could make you feel like a complete piece of garbage while smiling and offering you a casserole. "Grant, dear," she said, linking her arm through mine like we were old friends instead of two people who barely tolerated each other. "I wanted to have a little chat with you about Melissa's decision." Here we go, I thought. Round two of let's all gang up on Grant. "Joan, I really don't think this is the right place." "Oh, nonsense. There's no wrong place to discuss doing God's work." She patted my arm with her free hand, the same way you'd pat a dog who just peed on the carpet. "What Melissa is doing is truly noble. She's bringing life into the world for people who can't do it themselves. You should be proud of her, not trying to hold her back." Noble. There was that word again. Apparently, everyone had gotten the memo that this was the official spin we were putting on the situation. "Joanne, I understand that you think." "I don't think, dear, I know. I raised 3 children and I know what sacrifice looks like. Melissa is making a beautiful sacrifice. And as her husband, you should be supporting her, not making her feel guilty about doing the right thing." The right thing. The right thing would have been talking to me before she agreed to anything. The right thing would have been considering how this would affect our kids, our marriage, our entire life. But apparently I was the only one who seemed to think any of that mattered. "Has it occurred to anyone?" I said, trying to keep my voice low, even though I wanted to shout. "That maybe Melissa should have discussed this with her husband before agreeing to carry another man's baby." Joanne's smile never wavered, but her grip on my arm tightened. "Marriage is about supporting each other's dreams, Grant, not holding each other back out of selfishness." Selfishness? Right. Because not wanting your family to be turned into a circus sideshow was selfish. Because thinking your wife should prioritize her actual family over her boss's wishes was selfish. That night after the kids were in bed and Melissa was upstairs taking one of her endless baths, I sat her down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, where we'd helped the kids with homework, where we'd planned vacations we couldn't afford, and dreamed about a future that was apparently never going to happen. "Melissa," I said, looking directly into her eyes, hoping she could see how serious I was, I need you to really hear me. If you go through with this surrogate thing, our marriage is over." She stared at me for a long moment, and for just a second I thought I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. Maybe she was finally starting to understand what was at stake here. Maybe she was realizing that some decisions can't be undone, that some choices change everything. But then her face hardened and she crossed her arms over her chest like she was building a wall between us. "Then maybe," she said, her voice cold enough to freeze hell over, "you should rethink what being a husband means." And there it was again. The same line she'd used a few nights ago, delivered with the same icy certainty. Like I was the problem, like I was the one being unreasonable. That was her ultimatum, delivered with all the warmth of a tax audit. Shape up or ship out. Support her insane plan or get out of her way. Looking back now, I realized that was the moment our marriage officially flatlined. Everything that happened after that was just the long, slow process of pulling the plug. 3 months, 3 goddamn months of walking on eggshells, sleeping in the same bed as someone who'd essentially become a stranger, and pretending everything was normal while my wife went through the motions of getting artificially inseminated with another mad sperm. Yeah, you read that right. Artificially inseminated because apparently even when you're destroying your marriage, there are still medical procedures to follow. During those 3 months, I kept hoping she'd come to her senses. Maybe she'd wake up one morning and realize that carrying her boss's baby wasn't exactly the career mush she thought it was. Maybe she'd look at our kids, Jake with his gapto grin, Emma with her stubborn cooic, and little Sophie who still crawled into our bed during thunderstorms, and remember that she already had a family worth protecting. But hope, as it turns out, is just disappointment wearing a fancy outfit. The morning everything became real started like any other Tuesday in suburban hell. I was downstairs making coffee in our ancient Mr. Coffee machine that made sounds like a dying walrus, but somehow still managed to brew a decent cup when I heard Melissa's footsteps on the stairs. Not her usual rushed morning stomp. She was late for everything, always had been, but slow. Deliberate steps like she was walking to her own execution or mine. She appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing that ratty pink bathrobe she'd had since college. The one with the coffee stain on the front that no amount of bleach could remove. Her hair was pulled back in one of those messy buns that women somehow make look effortless, but probably takes 20 minutes to achieve, and she was holding something in her hand. A pregnancy test, because of course she was. "Grand," she said, and her voice had this weird mix of excitement and terror that I'd heard twice before when she told me she was pregnant with Jake and again with Emma. But this time hearing it made my stomach drop through the floor and probably into our neighbor's basement. I set down my coffee mug, the one Emma had made me in art class with "World's Okayest Dad" painted in crooked letters, and turned to face her fully. Part of me wanted to run, just bolt out the back door, hop in my Honda Civic, and drive until I hit ocean or ran out of gas, whichever came first. But the other part of me, the part that had been preparing for this moment for 3 months, just stood there waiting for the inevitable. "It worked," she said, holding up the pregnancy test like it was a winning lottery ticket instead of the death certificate for our marriage. "I'm pregnant." And there it was. The moment when theoretical became real, when stupid became irreversible, when my wife officially became pregnant with her boss's baby. She was standing there with this triumphant smile on her face like she just won the Nobel Prize for outstanding achievement and ruining your family. And all I could think was how completely and utterly screwed we were. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't grab her by the shoulders and shake her until she came to her senses. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and said the only thing that made sense anymore. "Okay. That's it." Just okay, one word for letters. The period at the end of the sentence that had been our marriage. She blinked at me, clearly expecting some kind of bigger reaction. Maybe she thought I'd suddenly see the light and realize what a beautiful, generous thing she was doing. Maybe she thought I'd break down and beg her to reconsider. Or maybe she thought I'd lose my completely and give her the dramatic confrontation she could use to justify everything she'd done. But I didn't give her any of that. I just picked up my coffee, took a sip, and said it again. "Okay, that's it," she asked. And now there was confusion creeping into her voice. "That's all you have to say?" I shrugged, which I know sounds callous, but what else was there to do? We'd already had every conversation worth having about this topic. I'd already told her exactly what would happen if she went through with it. She'd already made it clear that my opinion didn't matter to her. So, yeah, okay, pretty much covered it. Melissa, I said, setting my mug down and turning toward the stairs. You made your choice 3 months ago. Now I'm making mine. I went upstairs, got dressed for work, and kissed each of my kids goodbye like it was any other morning. Jake was trying to eat his cereal while simultaneously playing some game on his tablet. Emma was having a meltdown because her favorite shirt was in the dirty laundry, and Sophie was sitting in her high chair painting her face with yogurt. Normal chaos. Beautiful. Normal chaos. That was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Melissa followed me to the front door, still in that damn bathrobe, still holding the pregnancy test like it was made of gold. "Grant, we need to talk about this," she said, and the desperation in her voice almost. Al almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. "No," I said, grabbing my keys from the bowl by the door. The ceramic bowl Emma had made in second grade that was supposed to look like a flower, but mostly looked like something you'd find at the bottom of a pond. We really don't. And then I left. I drove to work, sat in my cubicle, and spent 8 hours entering numbers into spreadsheets while my marriage imploded in slow motion. Around lunchtime, I pulled out my phone and called James Holloway, a divorce attorney I'd gone to high school with. We played on the same baseball team junior year. He was a decent shortstop, terrible at math, and apparently great at destroying marriages for a living. "Jim," I said when he picked up, "it's Grant Walker. I need a lawyer." There was a pause, and then he said, "Jesus, Grant, what did you do?" "It's not what I did," I said, looking around the office to make sure nobody was listening. "It's what my wife did. She's pregnant with her boss's baby." Another pause, longer this time. "Come again. She's a surrogate for her boss and his wife. I told her not to do it. She did it anyway. Now I need to know what my options are." "Holy man, that's wow. Okay, can you come in tomorrow morning? We need to talk about this in person." 2 days later, I had divorce papers drawn up. Professional, clean, no-nonsense divorce papers that laid out exactly what I wanted. Custody of our 3 kids, half the house equity, and absolutely zero responsibility for the baby she was carrying. I had James serve them to her at her office because I figured if she could make major life decisions without consulting me, I could return the favor. She called me that afternoon, sobbing so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. "You can't be serious." She kept repeating like saying it enough times would somehow make it true. "You can't be serious," but I was serious, dead serious, more serious than I'd ever been about anything in my life. "Melissa," I said, sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Starbucks because I couldn't have this conversation at home with the kids listening. "I told you exactly what would happen if you did this. You didn't believe me. That's not my fault." Even her boss got involved because apparently Charles Whitmore thought his money and influence extended to my personal life. He called me that evening, his voice dripping with that fake concern that rich people use when they're pretending to care about the little people. "Grant," he said, and I could practically hear the expensive suit he was wearing. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. What Melissa is doing, what she's doing for Vivon and me, it's a beautiful thing. I gift. You should see this as something to be proud of, not something to run away from. I gift. A beautiful gift. That's what he called the destruction of my marriage." "Mr. Whitmore," I said, using his formal title because screw his first name familiarity. "Let me make something clear. You hired my wife's body to carry your baby. You destroyed my marriage. That makes this your problem, not mine. Handle it." And then I hung up on him because rich or not, boss or not, he didn't get to lecture me about my own life. That night, lying in bed next to a woman who was carrying another man's child, I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't always come with dramatic music and tear-filled confrontations. Sometimes it comes with a triumphant smile and a pregnancy test delivered over morning coffee like it's good news instead of the end of everything you thought you knew about your life. You know what's funny about filing for divorce? It doesn't actually make your wife disappear. I mean, I knew that logically. I'm not a complete idiot, but somehow I'd thought that once I served Melissa those papers, she'd magically vanish from my daily life like a bad dream or a telemarketer who finally gets the hint. Instead, she just kept existing in my space, growing another man's baby while acting like nothing had fundamentally changed about our situation. The first few weeks after dropping the divorce bomb were like living in some twisted version of the Twilight Zone. Melissa refused to move out, claiming she needed stability during this difficult time. Apparently, carrying your boss's baby is stressful. Who knew? So, we were stuck in this bizarre domestic purgatory where we shared a house, kids, and a mortgage, but absolutely nothing else. She'd set up camp in the guest bedroom, the one we'd always said we'd turn into a home office someday when we had money and motivation. Now, it looked like a nursery showroom had exploded in there, boxes of baby stuff everywhere, a crib that was still in pieces leaning against the wall, and enough prenatal vitamins to supply a small army of pregnant women. The whole room smelled like that weird combination of new plastic and false hope. The worst part wasn't the constant reminder that my wife was playing house with someone else's genetic material. No, the worst part was how she kept acting like I was still her husband, like I was still somehow responsible for taking care of her during her journey. That's what she called it, a journey. Like she was climbing Everest instead of just getting knocked up by her boss. "Grant, can you grab me some pickles on your way home?" She'd text me at work like I was still running errands for her instead of actively trying to extract myself from her life. "Grant, can you help me set up the crib? It's really heavy and I'm not supposed to lift anything over 10 pounds. Grant. Can you drive me to my doctor's appointment? Charles and Vivian are in Europe for 2 weeks." Each time I'd look at my phone and feel this mixture of disbelief and rage that she still thought I was part of Team Melissa. Did she honestly believe that filing for divorce was just some kind of negotiating tactic? Like I was playing hard to get instead of actually trying to get the hell out of Dodge. My standard response became a masterpiece of emotional detachment. I wouldn't even look up from whatever I was doing. Usually my laptop because work had become my escape from the circus my home life had become. Not my kid, not my problem. 6 words, simple, direct, and absolutely devastating in their clarity. The first time I said it, Melissa looked like I'd physically slapped her. By the 10th time, she just got this pinched expression around her eyes, like she was developing a permanent migraine from dealing with my unreasonable attitude. But here's the thing about being pregnant. It doesn't care whether your husband has checked out of the relationship or not. Biology doesn't give a damn about your emotional state or your marital status. So, while I was busy practicing my emotional detachment, Melissa was dealing with all the fun stuff that comes with growing a human. Morning sickness that lasted all day, weird food cravings that sent her to the grocery store at midnight looking for pickles and ice cream, and the kind of exhaustion that made her fall asleep sitting up watching Netflix. And when things got really tough, when the glamorous reality of being a surrogate mother started to hit her, guess who she turned to for support? Not Charles and Vivian, who were busy living their fabulous rich people life. Not her sister, Clara, who was great at cheerleading from a distance, but mysteriously unavailable when actual help was needed. Not her mother, Joan, who'd suddenly developed a case of selective hearing whenever Melissa called, asking for assistance. Nope. She turned to me, the guy she'd basically told to go screw himself when he asked her not to carry another man's baby. The pattern was always the same. She'd start out trying to handle everything herself, putting on this brave face like she was some kind of pregnancy warrior who didn't need anybody. But then reality would set in, usually around 3 a.m. when the baby decided to practice kickboxing on her internal organs, and she'd come knocking on my bedroom door like a lost puppy looking for shelter. "Grant," she'd whisper, tapping softly on the door like she was afraid to wake me up, even though we both knew I wasn't sleeping. Who could sleep with all the drama happening under our roof? "Grant, are you awake?" I'd lie there in the dark staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe on the other side of the door. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 8 years, the part that had held her hair back when she had food poisoning, the part that had stayed up all night when she was scared about Jake's ear infection, wanted to open that door and help her. But the bigger part, the part that was still pissed off about her complete disregard for our marriage, kept me glued to the mattress. "Please, Grant, just once, can you help me? The baby's kicking so hard I can't sleep, and I'm scared something's wrong." That's when I'd roll over and deliver my favorite new phrase with all the warmth of a tax audit. Not my baby, not my problem. The silence that followed was always thick enough to cut with a knife. Sometimes she'd stand there for a few minutes, probably hoping I'd change my mind. Sometimes I'd hear her crying softly through the door, which should have broken my heart but mostly just made me angry. She'd made her choice, and now she was learning that choices have consequences. Even our neighbors started to notice that something was off. Mr. Daniels, the retired guy next door who spent most of his time watering his lawn and judging everyone else's landscaping choices, cornered me one Saturday morning while I was taking out the trash. "Grant," he said, glancing toward our house, where Melissa was visible through the kitchen window, moving slowly and looking about as miserable as a human being could look. "Everything okay over there? Melissa looks exhausted." I followed his gaze and saw her struggling to reach something in the top cabinet, her pregnant belly making it impossible to get close enough to the counter. 6 months ago, I would have rushed inside to help her. Now, I just shrugged and kept walking toward the garbage cans. She made her bed. I told Mr. Daniels, let her lie in it. He gave me this look like I just announced I was joining a cult or starting a meth lab in my garage. "But Grant, she's pregnant. Doesn't matter what happened between you two. She needs help." "Then her boss can help her," I said, shoving the trash bag into the can with more force than necessary. "He's the father, not me." Mr. Daniels shook his head like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "I don't know what happened between you two, but this isn't right, son. A man doesn't abandon his wife when she's carrying a child. A wife doesn't get pregnant by another man." I shot back because I was getting really tired of everyone acting like I was the villain in this story. Charles Whitmore wanted a baby. He got one. Now he can deal with everything that comes with it. But Charles and Vivian, it turned out, were about as useful as screen doors on a submarine when it came to the day-to-day reality of pregnancy. They showed up for the big moments, the ultrasound appointments where they could see their precious baby developing, the doctor visits where they could ask questions about genetic testing and due dates. They brought expensive gifts and talked about nursery themes and college funds. But when Melissa needed someone to hold her hair back while she puked her guts out, or when she needed help getting up from the couch because her center of gravity had shifted to somewhere around Jupiter, Charles and Vivian were nowhere to be found. They had lives to live, after all, important places to be. Charles had board meetings and golf games. Vivian had charity galas and spa appointments. They couldn't be expected to deal with the messy, unglamorous parts of pregnancy. That's what husbands were for. Except I wasn't her husband anymore. Not in any way that mattered. I was just the guy who happened to share a house with her while lawyers figured out how to divide up 8 years of marriage into neat little legal categories. I was the roommate who knew where she kept the good ice cream and which brand of prenatal vitamins didn't make her nauseous, but who had absolutely zero interest in using that knowledge to make her life easier. Because here's the thing nobody talks about when they're busy judging your choices. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes respect matters more than affection. And sometimes preserving your own sanity is more important than being the bigger person. Melissa had chosen Charles and Vivian's needs over mine, their future over ours, their happiness over our family's stability. Now she could live with the consequences of that choice, all by herself, just like she'd wanted. 9 months. That's how long it takes to grow a human being, destroy a marriage and completely lose your damn mind. By the time Melissa hit her third trimester, our house had turned into some kind of surreal performance art piece about dysfunction. She'd waddle around like a penguin wearing yoga pants, complaining about everything from her swollen ankles to the baby's habit of using her bladder as a soccer ball, while I perfected the art of being physically present but emotionally checked out. The whole situation was like watching a car accident in slow motion. You know it's going to end badly, but you can't look away because the human brain is wired for disaster porn. Every day brought some new drama, some fresh reminder that my wife was carrying another man's genetic legacy, while I counted down the days until I could legally extract myself from this nightmare. The birth itself happened on a Tuesday in March, because apparently even babies don't have the courtesy to arrive on convenient days. I was at work deep in the thrilling world of quarterly tax filings when my phone started buzzing like an angry hornet. The first call was from Melissa, which I let go to voicemail because I'd learned that answering her calls only led to requests for favors I had no intention of granting. The second call was also from Melissa, then the third, fourth, and fifth. Finally, I picked up, figuring maybe the house was on fire or one of our actual kids needed something. "Grant," she gasped, and I could hear that particular brand of panic that meant things were happening fast. "It's time. The baby's coming." For a split second, just one stupid, reflexive second, my brain went into husband mode. The same mode that had kicked in when she'd gone into labor with Jake, Emma, and Sophie. The mode where you drop everything, grab the hospital bag, and drive like a maniac while trying to remember everything from those childbirth classes you'd slept through. But then reality crashed back in like a bucket of ice water. This wasn't my baby. This wasn't my emergency. This was Charles and Vivian's big moment. The culmination of their expensive fertility journey. The answer to all their rich people prayers. "Okay," I said, my voice as flat as roadkill. "So called Charles." "I did," she sobbed. And now I could hear the real fear creeping in. "He's in a meeting. His secretary said she'd try to reach him but then call Vivian. She's at some spy in Napa. Grant, please, I hung up. Just pressed the little red button and went back to my tax forms like nothing had happened. Because what was I supposed to do? Drop everything and rush to the hospital to watch my wife give birth to her boss's baby? Hold her hand while she delivered another man's child? Cut the umbilical cord that connected someone else's kid to my wife's body? Yeah, that was going to be a hard pass for me. The phone kept ringing. Melissa probably calling from the ambulance or the hospital, desperate for someone, anyone, to be there for her during what should have been one of the most important moments of her life. But she'd made her choice about who mattered to her. And it wasn't me. Around 3:00 p.m. my desk phone rang. "The hospital, Mr. Walker. This is St. Mary's Hospital. Your wife Melissa asked us to call you. She's given birth to a healthy baby boy and she's asking if you can come." "I'm not the father," I said, cutting off whatever guilt trip they were about to lay on me. "Call Charles Whitmore. He's the father. This has nothing to do with me." There was a pause. The kind of silence that happens when someone realizes they've stepped into a situation way more complicated than they bargained for. "Sir, Mrs. Walker is very upset. She's asking for you specifically, and I'm specifically not coming," I said like I told you. "Call Charles Whitmore. It's his baby, his responsibility." I gave them Charles's office number and hung up. Then spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work while ignoring the growing knot in my stomach. Not guilt. I was way past guilt, but something else. Maybe relief that it was finally over. That the pregnancy that had been hanging over our lives like a storm cloud had finally ended. Maybe anticipation for what came next now, that there was an actual baby involved instead of just the abstract idea of one. That evening, I picked up our kids from after-school care like it was any other day. Jake was excited because he got an A on his science project about volcanoes. Emma was grumpy because some kid had stolen her favorite pencil eraser. And Sophie wanted to know if we could have pancakes for dinner. Normal kid problems. Beautiful. Normal kid problems that had nothing to do with surrogacy or bosses or babies that belonged to other people. "Where's Mommy?" Sophie asked as I buckled her into her car seat. "Mommy's at the hospital," I said, which was technically true. She had to help some people today. "Is she sick?" Emma asked. And I could see her starting to worry in that way kids do when they sense something's wrong but don't understand what. "No, sweetheart, she's fine. She just had to do something for work." It wasn't a lie, exactly. Melissa had made it pretty clear that this whole surrogate thing was about her career, about impressing Charles and securing her position at the firm. So yeah, it was work-related. We went home, ordered pizza, and had what turned out to be one of the nicest evenings we had in months, without Melissa's pregnancy hormones turning every conversation into a potential minefield. Without the constant tension of living with someone who'd fundamentally betrayed everything our marriage was supposed to represent, the house felt peaceful for the first time in 9 months. Around 8 p.m. after the kids were in bed, my phone rang. Melissa calling from the hospital, her voice thick with exhaustion and something that might have been regret. "Grant," she whispered like she was afraid someone might overhear. "Please come. I'm scared." And for just a moment I felt something crack inside my chest. Not enough to change my mind, but enough to remind me that once upon a time I'd love this woman enough to marry her. Enough to have 3 kids with her. Enough to believe we'd grow old together on some front porch somewhere, watching our grandkids play in the yard. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes it's not even relevant. "Call Charles," I said, my voice gentler than it had been in months, but still absolutely final. "He's the father, not me. Charles is. He's busy. The baby's beautiful. Grant. He has these tiny little fingers and he's so perfect. And I need someone here who cares about me." That's when it hit me. The real tragedy of the whole situation. She'd spent 9 months carrying this baby for people who saw her as nothing more than a high-end incubator. And now that the job was done, she was discovering exactly how much they actually cared about her as a person. Charles was busy, probably celebrating with Vivian somewhere expensive, while the woman who'd carried their child lay in a hospital bed alone and scared, realizing that she'd traded her marriage for people who couldn't even be bothered to show up when she needed them most. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I tried to warn her. I told her exactly what would happen. She'd chosen not to believe me. "Melissa," I said, looking out the kitchen window at our backyard, where the kids' swing set sat empty in the fading light. "You made your choice. Now live with it." And then I hung up and turned off my phone because I was done being her backup plan. Done being the person she turned to when her real priorities let her down. Done being married to someone who'd put her boss's needs ahead of our family's well-being. The baby was born healthy and perfect, just like she'd said. Charles and Vivian finally showed up at the hospital with flowers and champagne and probably a photographer to document their magical moment. They got their custom-made baby, their happy ending, their perfect little family. And I got to start figuring out what my life looked like without the woman who'd been the center of it for 8 years. But who'd chosen to give the most intimate part of herself to someone else. The thing about rock bottom is that it's surprisingly comfortable once you've been there for a while. You'd think it would be this dramatic, soul-crushing experience. But really, it's more like settling into a worn-out recliner. Not pleasant exactly, but familiar enough that you stop noticing how much it sucks. Melissa came home from the hospital 3 days after giving birth, and it was like watching a ghost try to resume its old haunting routine. She moved through the house like she was sleepwalking, clutching that baby like it was the last life preserver on the Titanic, and looking at me with these desperate, hollow eyes that screamed, "Fix this," louder than any words ever could. But here's the thing about being the guy who warned everyone the ship was going to sink. By the time you're proven right, nobody wants to hear, "I told you so." They just want you to somehow magically make everything okay again. Like you're some kind of domestic superhero who can undo months of spectacularly bad decisions with the power of forgiveness and selective amnesia. Not happening. The first week was almost funny in a dark comedy sort of way. Melissa would shuffle around the house in her ratty bathrobe, looking like an extra from a zombie movie, while Charles and Vivian's beautiful gift screamed at all hours of the day and night. Turns out babies don't give a damn about your motivations for having them. They're going to cry whether you're their biological mother or just the lady who happened to carry them for 9 months. She'd set up a makeshift nursery in the guest bedroom, complete with all the baby gear that Charles and Vivian had bought, but apparently couldn't be bothered to take home yet. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here she was playing house with someone else's kid, while our actual children tipped out around the house like they were afraid to breathe too loud. "Mommy, why is the baby here?" Sophie asked one morning, standing in the kitchen doorway in her favorite pajamas. The ones with unicorns that she insisted had magical powers. "I thought you said he was going to live with other people." Melissa looked like Sophie had just asked her to explain quantum physics in interpretive dance. "Well, sweetheart, sometimes babies need to stay with their birth mommy for a little while before they go to their forever home." Birth mommy, Jesus Christ. She was talking about herself like she was running some kind of baby rental service, like when we fostered Mr. Whiskers before he went to live with Grandma. Emma piped up because my 8-year-old apparently had a better grasp on the situation than my wife did. Something like that, Melissa said, which was probably the most honest thing she'd said in months. But the comparison to our brief stint fostering Joanne's cat was more accurate than Melissa wanted to admit because, just like with Mr. Whiskers, everyone expected me to help take care of something that wasn't mine and wasn't staying. The bottles started appearing in our sink like some kind of domestic plague. Formula containers cluttered our kitchen counter. Dirty diapers overflowed the garbage can, and our washing machine ran constantly, churning through an endless cycle of tiny clothes and blankets that smelled like that particular combination of baby powder and desperation. And through it all, Melissa kept shooting me these looks. Part pleading, part anger, part complete bewilderment that I wasn't stepping up to help her with her noble sacrifice. Like I was failing some test I'd never agreed to take. The breaking point came on a Thursday night about 2 weeks after she brought the baby home. I was in the living room trying to help Jake with his math homework while the baby screamed bloody murder upstairs when Melissa appeared at the top of the stairs looking like she'd been through a blender. "Grant," she called down, her voice cracking with exhaustion. "Can you please just hold him for 10 minutes? I need to take a shower." I didn't even look up from Jake's algebra worksheet. Not my baby, not my problem. It was the same response I've been giving for months, delivered with the same flat tone I perfected during our entire pregnancy nightmare. But something about hearing it in that moment with the baby crying and Melissa looking like she was about to collapse made it land differently. She came down the stairs slowly, still holding the baby, and I could see her hands shaking. Not from exhaustion, though she was definitely that, but from rage. Fewer, undiluted fury that had been building up for weeks. "You know what?" she said, her voice getting louder with each word. "I am so sick of your attitude. You owe me this much." That's when I finally looked up from the homework. Jake was staring at both of us with wide eyes, probably wondering if his parents were about to start throwing furniture at each other. The baby was still screaming, which seemed appropriate for the moment. "I owe you," I repeated, standing up slowly because this conversation was clearly going to require my full attention. "I owe you what exactly?" "Support," she screamed, and the baby's crying got even louder, like he was trying to match her energy. "I'm your wife. This is your home. You can't just pretend I don't exist." "Jake," I said, keeping my voice calm, "go upstairs and play in your room for a while." "Okay, buddy." He scrambled out of there like his pants were on fire, which was probably the smartest thing anyone had done in our house all week. Once he was gone, I turned back to Melissa and let her have it. All the anger I'd been swallowing for months. All the resentment I'd been choking down, all the hurt I'd been pretending didn't exist, it all came pouring out. "Let me tell you what I owe you," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "I owe you absolutely nothing. You want to know why? Because you're not my wife anymore. Not in any way that matters." Her face went pale, but I wasn't done. "You chose to get pregnant by another man. You chose to carry your boss's baby. You chose his needs over our marriage, his wants over our family, his happiness over everything we built together. So no, Melissa, I don't owe you support. I don't owe you help. I don't owe you a goddamn thing. It's not like that," she protested. But her voice was weaker now, like she was starting to realize how deep the hole she dug really was. "It's exactly like that," I shot back. "You want to play house with Charles Whitmore's baby? Fine, but don't expect me to be your backup husband when the real parents can't be bothered to show up." That's when she really lost it. The baby was screaming, she was screaming, and I was standing there watching my marriage finally die its long overdue death. "You're abandoning me," she shrieked like somehow I was the villain in this story. "How can you be so cruel?" "I'm not abandoning you," I said, grabbing my keys from the counter because I needed to get out of there before I said something I'd actually regret. "I'm just refusing to clean up your mess anymore." "Where are you going?" she demanded. "Anywhere but here," I said, heading for the door. Call Vivian. Call your sister, your mother, call the Pope for all I care. But stop calling me. I'm done." And then I left. Got in my car and drove around for 2 hours listening to talk radio and trying to remember what my life had been like before it turned into a soap opera written by someone with serious mental health issues. When I came back, the house was quiet. Melissa's car was gone and so was the baby. She'd finally packed up and left, taking her beautiful gift with her. For the first time in months, I could hear myself think. For the first time in almost a year, my house felt like home again instead of a war zone. The kids were upstairs, probably confused and scared by all the yelling, but safe. Our actual children, the ones who mattered, the ones I'd been trying to protect through this whole nightmare. I made them mac and cheese for dinner, the good stuff from the box, not the fancy organic kind Melissa always insisted on. And we ate in front of the TV like we were having an indoor picnic. Nobody mentioned the baby. Nobody asked where Mommy went. They just seemed relieved that the constant crying had stopped and the house felt normal again. That night, after I tucked them all in and made sure they knew they were safe and loved, I sat in my kitchen and realized something important. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their self-destruction. Melissa had made her choice. Now she could live with it. You know what they say about peace and quiet? It never lasts long enough. For exactly 2 blissful days after Melissa packed up her baby drama and left, my house felt like an actual home again. The kids and I fell into this easy rhythm where we could eat cereal for dinner without judgment, watch cartoons without someone sighing dramatically about screen time, and generally exist without walking on eggshells around a woman who'd spent the last year making everyone else's life miserable. But apparently the universe has a sick sense of humor, because just when I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could get through this divorce without any more insanity, the flying monkeys descended. It started with my voicemail inbox lighting up like a Christmas tree. I'd come home from work to find 7 new messages, each one more ridiculous than the last. It was like Melissa had sent out some kind of emergency alert to every person who'd ever met her. Attention all friends and family members. Grand is being mean to me. Please call and tell him he's a terrible person. The first message was from her sister Clara because of course it was. Clara had apparently appointed herself as the head of the Grand as obviously Satan committee, and she was taking her new job very seriously. Grand, her voice came through my phone speaker with all the warmth of a tax audit. I cannot believe what Melissa told me. She's sitting in my living room right now, crying her eyes out because her own husband abandoned her with a newborn baby. How can you be so heartless? She's your wife, Grand. Your wife. Where is your sense of responsibility? I had to laugh at that one. Responsibility, right. Because apparently I was responsible for taking care of a baby that wasn't mine. Born as a result of a decision I'd explicitly opposed for people who couldn't be bothered to handle their own parenting duties. That made perfect sense in Clara's twisted little world. The next message was from Melissa's college roommate, some woman named Jennifer, who had met exactly twice in 8 years of marriage, but who apparently felt qualified to judge my entire character based on whatever sob story Melissa had fed her. Grand, this is Jennifer Morrison, Melissa's friend from college. I just wanted to say that I think what you're doing is absolutely disgusting. Melissa is going through the hardest time of her life, and instead of supporting her, you're being selfish and cruel. She gave that couple the most precious gift anyone can give, and you're punishing her for it. I hope you can live with yourself. The most precious gift, Jesus Christ. They were all reading from the same script. Like carrying your boss's baby was some kind of humanitarian effort, instead of a spectacularly bad career move that destroyed a marriage. But the real masterpiece came from her mother, Joan, who'd apparently been saving up her passive-aggressive energy for one devastating voicemail that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Grant, dear, she began using that saccharine tone she always used when she was about to gut you with surgical precision. I just got off the phone with my daughter, and I have to say I'm deeply disappointed in you. I thought she was getting a man who would stand by her through thick and thin, for better or worse. But apparently I was wrong. She paused there, probably for dramatic effect, before launching into the main course of her guilt trip. That poor girl is sitting in Clara's apartment right now with a beautiful baby boy, and she's heartbroken because the man she married, the man who promised to love and honor her, has turned his back on her in her hour of need. She's exhausted. She's scared, and she's dealing with all of this alone because you've decided to be petty and vindictive instead of being the husband she needs. Petty and vindictive. That's what Joanne called my refusal to play house with my wife's boss's baby. Not principled, not self-respecting, petty and vindictive. I raised 3 children, Grant, and I know what sacrifice looks like. What Melissa did, carrying a child for a couple who couldn't have their own, that's the kind of selfless act that should make a husband proud, not angry. The fact that you can't see that says more about your character than hers. The voicemail went on for another 2 minutes, covering everything from my supposed lack of Christian values to my failure as a role model for our children. By the end of it, I was half convinced that I was indeed the Antichrist and Melissa was some kind of modern-day saint who'd been unfairly persecuted for her noble deeds. But the absolute cherry on top of this sundae came the next evening when my phone rang during dinner. I was helping Sophie cut up her chicken nuggets when Charles Whitmore's name appeared on my caller ID. Charles Whitmore, the man who'd hired my wife's reproductive system, was calling to lecture me about my attitude. The balls on this guy could have been registered as their own small country. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I had to hear what this poem Poos has had to say for himself. "Grant," he said when I picked up his voice dripping with that fake concern that rich people use when they're slumming it with the little people, "I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Melissa." Of course, he did. Because apparently my soon-to-be ex-wife was just handing out my personal information to anyone who asked. "What can I do for you, Charles?" I asked, putting him on speaker so I could continue helping Sophie with her dinner. If he was going to waste my time, he could at least provide some entertainment for the kids. "Well, I wanted to talk to you about this situation with Melissa and the baby. I think there's been a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding, right? Like I'd somehow misunderstood the part where my wife got pregnant with his kid. "I'm not sure what you think I'm misunderstanding," I said, cutting up him as nuggets while she made faces at the phone. "Seems pretty straightforward to me, Grant. What Melissa has done for Vivon and me, it's incredible. It's a gift beyond measure. She's given us the chance to have a family, to experience the joy of parenthood that we thought was lost to us forever. You should be proud of her. You should be supporting her through this transition. Like carrying someone else's baby was some kind of career change instead of a marriage-ending betrayal." "Charles," I said, wiping barbecue sauce off Sophie's face, "let me explain something to you. You hired my wife to carry your baby. You destroyed my marriage. You got what you paid for. Now it's your responsibility to deal with the consequences." There was a pause, and I could practically hear him trying to figure out how to spin this in his favor. "But Grant, you're still part of this family. We're all connected now through this beautiful child. We need to work together, support each other." That's when I lost it, because this rich, entitled piece of garbage who treated my wife like a rental womb was trying to tell me that I was part of his family now. Like his money gave him the right to reorganize my entire life to suit his convenience. "Listen to me very carefully. Charles," I said, my voice getting deadly quiet, "we are not family, we are not connected, we are not anything. You wanted a baby, you got one. You hired my wife's body and destroyed my marriage in the process. But here's the thing that makes this your problem, not mine, Grant. I don't think you understand." "No, I understand perfectly. You thought you could buy your way into parenthood without dealing with any of the messy parts. Well, congratulations. Those messy parts include middle-of-the-night feedings, diaper changes, and a woman who's probably realizing that being a surrogate isn't quite the glamorous experience she thought it would be. But that's your mess to clean up, not mine. But Melissa needed to think about what she was doing before she did it." I interrupted. "She needed to consider how this would affect your actual family before she agreed to carry your baby. She needed to listen to her husband when he told her this was a terrible idea. But she didn't do any of those things, did she?" The line went quiet, and for a moment I thought maybe I'd actually gotten through to him. Maybe he was starting to understand that his money couldn't buy him absolution from the chaos he'd helped create. But then he came back with that same smooth, condescending tone. "Grant, I think you're being unreasonable. This is about more than just you and Melissa. There's a child involved now." "Your child," I said, cutting him off again. "Your responsibility, your problem. I never wanted any part of this arrangement. I told everyone it was a bad idea. And now I'm supposed to clean up the mess. I don't think so." And then I hung up on him because, rich or not, boss or not, he didn't get to lecture me about responsibility while sitting in his fancy office, completely removed from the reality of what he'd set in motion. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat in my kitchen and marveled at the sheer audacity of these people. They'd all rallied around Melissa like she was some kind of victim, instead of a woman who'd made a series of spectacularly bad choices that had predictable consequences. Not one of them had called to ask how I was doing. Not one had acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, I had a right to be angry about my wife carrying another man's baby. Not one had suggested that perhaps Melissa should have considered her husband's feelings before agreeing to this insane arrangement. But they all had plenty to say about my supposed failures as a husband and human being. The begging parade was in full swing, and I was apparently the only one who could see how ridiculous the whole thing was. If you've never been through a divorce, let me paint you a picture. Imagine the worst job interview of your life crossed with a root canal, sprinkled with the emotional devastation of watching your entire adult life get dissected by strangers in cheap suits. Now multiply that by about 1,000, and you're getting close to what it's like to sit in a courtroom while lawyers argue over who gets to keep the good dinner where, and whether you're a terrible human being. The whole thing started 6 months after I'd filed the papers, because apparently the legal system moves at roughly the same speed as continental drift. By the time we actually made it to court, Melissa had settled into her new life as a single mother living in her sister's spare bedroom. Charles and Vivian had presumably bonded with their custom-made baby and had gotten comfortable with the idea that my marriage was dead than disco. But Melissa, being Melissa, couldn't just sign the papers and move on with her life. No, she had to turn our divorce into some kind of three-ring circus where she was the tragic heroine, and I was the mustache-twirling villain who'd abandoned his pregnant wife in her hour of need. Her lawyer was this guy named Richard Steinberg, one of those slick operators who probably learned his trade watching reruns of LA Law and figured out that righteous indignation pays better than actual legal knowledge. He had perfectly styled hair, a tan that definitely came from a bottle, and the kind of practiced sincerity that made you want to check your wallet after shaking his hand. My lawyer, on the other hand, was James Holloway, the same guy I played baseball with in high school, who'd gone on to law school while I was studying accounting and probably wondering why anyone would voluntarily choose a career that involved this much paperwork. Jim was the kind of lawyer who wore off-the-rack suits and actually cared about winning cases instead of just looking good while losing them. The courtroom itself looked exactly like every courtroom you've ever seen on TV, with paneling that had probably been installed during the Coolidge administration. Fluorescent lighting that made everyone look like they were suffering from a vitamin deficiency, in that particular smell that all government buildings seemed to have like disinfected mixed with broken dreams. Melissa sat at the plaintiff's table looking like she'd stepped out of a tragic single-mother photo shoot. She was wearing this simple black dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Her hair was pulled back in a style that said, "I'm too devastated to care about my appearance, but somehow still look perfect." And she had this expression on her face like she was bravely enduring an unthinkable injustice. Behind her in the gallery sat her entire support squad. Clara looking appropriately outraged, Joan dabbing at her eyes with a tissue like she was watching a particularly sad episode of This Is Us. And you not. Charles and Vivian Whitmore sitting in the back row like they were attending a community theater production of Poor Melissa Gets Screwed Over by Her Mean Husband. The audacity of those two showing up was almost impressive. Here they were, the people who'd started this whole mess by hiring my wife's reproductive system, sitting in my divorce proceedings like concerned family members instead of the home wrecking they actually were. Steinberg opened with what I can only describe as a masterclass in emotional manipulation. He painted a picture of Melissa as this selfless saint who'd made the ultimate sacrifice to help a childless couple only to be cruelly abandoned by her heartless husband during the most vulnerable time of her life. "Your Honor," he said, gesturing toward Melissa like she was some kind of religious icon. "My client is a woman who exemplifies the very best of human nature. When she learned that her employer and his wife were struggling with infertility, she made the extraordinary decision to serve as their surrogate mother. This wasn't a decision she made lightly, Your Honor. This was an act of pure compassion, a gift of life itself, a gift of life." Jesus, these people really were all reading from the same script. But instead of supporting his wife during this difficult time, Steinberg continued his voice, getting more dramatic with each word. The defendant chose to abandon her. He filed for divorce while she was pregnant. Your Honor, he refused to attend the birth of the child she was carrying. He has shown a callous disregard for his wife's emotional and physical well-being. That is frankly shocking. He went on like that for 20 minutes, painting me as some kind of monster who'd kicked a pregnant woman to the curb for having the audacity to help people in need. By the time he was done, I was half convinced that I should be locked up for crimes against humanity instead of just trying to get out of a marriage that had turned into a nightmare. But then it was Jim's turn, and that's when things got interesting. Your Honor, Jim said, standing up with a stack of papers that looked thick enough to stop a bullet. The plaintiff's attorney has told you a very compelling story. It's just too bad that story has almost nothing to do with the facts of this case. He walked over to the evidence table and picked up a manila folder that looked like it could have contained the secrets of the universe. The facts, Your Honor, are these. Mrs. Walker made a unilateral decision to carry another man's child without consulting her husband. When Mr. Walker expressed his opposition to this arrangement, she ignored him. When he explained how this decision would affect their marriage, she dismissed his concerns. And when he told her explicitly that proceeding with this surrogacy would end their marriage, she chose to proceed anyway. Jim opened the folder and pulled out what looked like a phone bill on steroids. Your Honor, I'd like to submit into evidence a series of text messages between the plaintiff and her sister, in which she admits that her husband was opposed to the surrogacy from the beginning. I'd also like to submit several email exchanges between the plaintiff and her employer, Mr. Whitmore, in which she discusses the surrogacy arrangement without ever mentioning her husband's objections. Steinberg jumped up like his chair was on fire. Objection, Your Honor. These communications are privileged. Over, the judge said, looking like he was already tired of this case, and it had barely started. Continue, Mr. Holloway. Jim smiled the way a shark smiles when it spots a wounded seal. Your Honor, these communications clearly show that Mrs. Walker was fully aware of her husband's position on this matter. In one text message to her sister, she explicitly states, and I quote Grant as being such a baby about this. It's my body, my choice. He doesn't get a vote. I watched Melissa's face go pale as Jim read that text out loud. Apparently, she'd forgotten about her little sister Toyster honesty session. Furthermore, Your Honor, I'd like to submit a recording of a conversation between Mr. and Mrs. Walker, in which Mr. Walker clearly states that if she proceeds with the surrogacy, their marriage will be over. Mrs. Walker's response, and again I quote, was, "Then maybe you should rethink what being a husband means." The judge looked up from his notes with the expression of a man who just realized he was dealing with something way more complicated than a standard divorce case. Mr. Holloway, are you suggesting that your client warned his wife about the consequences of her actions? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Your Honor. Mr. Walker made his position crystal clear from the beginning. He told his wife that carrying another man's child would destroy their marriage. She chose to ignore that warning. The dissolution of this marriage is the direct result of Mrs. Walker's decision to prioritize her employer's needs over her husband's clearly stated concerns. Steinberg tried to recover, arguing that a husband should support his wife's decisions regardless of his personal feelings. But the damage was done. The texts, the emails, the recorded conversation, it all painted a picture of a woman who'd made a unilateral decision to destroy her marriage, and was now shocked that her husband had actually followed through on his warnings. The best part was watching Charles and Vivon squirm in their seats as it became increasingly clear that their beautiful gift had come at the cost of someone else's family. They probably thought they were just hiring a surrogate, not destroying a marriage, but intent doesn't really matter when the results speak for themselves. By the time the proceedings wrapped up for the day, it was pretty clear which way the wind was blowing. Melissa looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Her legal dream team looked like they were already planning their exit strategy, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the truth would actually matter in this circus. Hope that someone would finally acknowledge that I wasn't the villain in this story, just a guy who tried to protect his marriage and been ignored. Hope that, when this was all over, I could finally move on with my life and stop being defined by myself and my wife's spectacularly bad decisions. 2 weeks after the courtroom circus ended, I found myself sitting in the same uncomfortable wooden chair, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of the tense drama of competing narratives, there was just the cold, hard reality of legal consequences being handed down by a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on the planet. Judge Morrison was one of those old-school guys who'd probably seen every sob story, every excuse, and every attempted emotional manipulation that the legal system had to offer. He had gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the expression of a man who'd stopped being surprised by human stupidity sometime around the Clinton administration. After reviewing all the evidence presented, he began, his voice carrying the weight of finality that only comes from years of making decisions that change people's lives forever. This court finds that the dissolution of this marriage was the direct result of unilateral decisions made by the plaintiff without regard for her spouse's clearly stated objections. I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been wound tight for almost a year. This was it. This was the moment when someone in authority finally acknowledged that I wasn't the bad guy in this story. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, the court finds that the plaintiff's decision to prioritize her employment obligations over her marital responsibilities demonstrates a fundamental disregard for the stability required to maintain a healthy family environment. Melissa sat at her table looking like someone had just told her that Santa Claus wasn't real and the Easter Bunny was a fraud. Her perfectly composed, tragic mother facade was cracking around the edges, and I could see the panic starting to creep in as she realized that her sob story wasn't going to get her what she wanted. Therefore, this court awards primary physical custody of the minor children, Jacob Walker, Emma Walker, and Sophie Walker, to the defendant, Grant Walker. The plaintiff will be granted supervised visitation rights to be exercised at times and locations to be determined by the court-appointed mediator. Supervised visitation. That was the legal way of saying, we don't trust you to be alone with your own kids without someone watching to make sure you don't screw up their lives any worse than you already have. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. And just like that, it was over. 9 months of pregnancy drama, 6 months of legal warfare, and years of marriage. All of it officially dead and buried in about 10 minutes of judicial pronouncement. Melissa broke down completely. Not the pretty, dignified crying you see in movies, but the ugly, desperate sobbing of someone who just realized that actions have consequences and lawyers can't always fix stupid decisions. Her sister Clara rushed forward to comfort her, shooting me a look that could have melted steel, like somehow I was responsible for the mess Melissa had made of her own life. I don't want to lose them. Melissa whispered through her tears loud enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. It was probably meant to be one last appeal to my non-existent sympathy. One final attempt to make me the villain for enforcing the natural consequences of her choices. I stood up, straightened my tie, the good one I'd bought specifically for this occasion, and looked down at the woman who had once been my partner and everything. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to carry another man's baby, I said, my voice calm and steady. You should have thought about them when Charles asked you to be a surrogate. You should have thought about them when I told you this would destroy our family. But you didn't think about them, did you? You thought about yourself. Her crying got louder, more desperate. But I wasn't done. You want to keep seeing our kids. Then show up for them. Be the mother they deserve instead of the woman who traded their family stability for her boss's approval. Prove that they matter more to you than your career ambitions or your need to impress people who don't give a damn about you. I picked up my briefcase, the same one I'd carried to work every day for 8 years, back when I thought I was building a life with someone who shared my priorities, and headed for the door. But understand this, Melissa, I said, turning back for one last look at the mother of my children. I won't let you drag them into your mess. I won't let you use them as emotional support animals while you figure out how to live with the consequences of your choices. They deserve better than that. They deserve a parent who puts them first. Outside the courthouse, the September air felt crisp and clean, like the world had been washed by rain, even though the sky was perfectly clear. Jim walked beside me, probably savoring his victory, but smart enough not to gloat about it. "You did the right thing, Grant," he said as we reached our cars. "Those kids need stability, and Melissa's proven she's not capable of providing that right now." I nodded, but I wasn't thinking about being right or wrong. I was thinking about Jake, Emma, and Sophie waiting for me at home with a babysitter, probably wondering why Daddy had to go to court again. And when things would finally get back to normal, for the first time in almost a year, I had an answer for them. Things were going to get back to normal starting right now. No more drama, no more chaos, no more wondering whether the woman who was supposed to be their mother would make another decision that would turn their world upside down. Just me and them building something stable and sane from the wreckage of what used to be our family. It wasn't a happy ending I'd imagined when I'd first gotten married, but it was better than the alternative. It was a chance for all of us to start over, to build something new without the constant threat of someone else's bad decisions destroying everything we cared about. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, watching Jake attempt to make pancakes while Emma argues with Sophie about whether syrup belongs on scrambled eggs. The house smells like coffee and slightly burned batter. The morning light is streaming through windows that actually stay clean now that nobody's crying on them constantly. And for the first time in what feels like forever, everything is exactly as chaotic as it should be. This is what normal looks like. Not the fake Instagram perfect normal that people pretend to have, but real normal. The kind where your 8-year-old puts too much vanilla in the pancake mix. Your 6-year-old insists that purple is a perfectly reasonable color for breakfast food. And your 4-year-old tries to feed pancakes to the dog we don't have. "Dad, can we get a dog?" Sophie asks, right on cue because apparently my kids have developed telepathic powers. "Ask me again when you can remember to put your clothes in the hamper instead of on the floor." I tell her, which his parents speak for, not until you're 30 and living in your own house. The funny thing about divorce is that everyone expects you to be miserable. They expect you to be bitter, lonely, struggling to figure out how to braid your daughter's hair or explain why mommy doesn't live here anymore. And sure, there were some rough patches, like the night Emma asked if mommy stopped loving us, or when Jake's teacher called because he'd been acting out at school, but mostly it's been peaceful, quiet in a good way. Like when you finally turn off a TV that's been playing static in the background for so long you forgot it was even on. The kids have their routine now. School, homework, dinner that doesn't come with a side of drama. Weekend movies where nobody sizes dramatically about screen time. Bedtime stories that don't get interrupted by phone calls from people wanting to discuss the moral implications of my abandonment of a woman who chose another man's baby over her own family. Melissa still calls sometimes, usually when she's run out of money, discover that Charles and Vivon aren't quite as generous with their beautiful gift provider as they were during the pregnancy, or realize that being a single mom living in her sister's spare bedroom isn't quite the empowering experience she thought it would be. "Grant, I know we've had our differences, but could you help me out with the electric bill? Just this once." "Grant, the baby's been crying all night and I don't know what to do. Charles said they're too busy to help this week." "Grant, I made a mistake. I see that now. Can we talk about working things out?" The answer is always the same. No, not because I'm trying to be cruel, but because I learned something important during this whole nightmare. You can't save people from the consequences of their own choices. You can't love someone into making better decisions. And you definitely can't build a stable life with someone who's willing to torch everything you've built together for the approval of people who see her as nothing more than a means to an end. Her choices are her burden now, not mine. The kids see her every other weekend, supervised visits at a neutral location, because the court decided she needed to prove she could prioritize their well-being over her own drama. Sometimes she shows up, sometimes she doesn't. The kids have learned not to get their hopes up too high, which breaks my heart, but also makes me proud of how resilient they are. "Dad," Emma says, interrupting my thoughts. "Jake put eggshells in the pancakes." "Did not." Jake protests. "That's just texture. Gross texture." Sophie adds healthily. I look at my 3 kids, my actual kids, the ones I chose to protect when their mother chose something else, and feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, because this isn't how I thought my life would turn out, but contentment with the knowledge that I did the right thing even when it was hard. All right, troops, I say, standing up to survey the pancake disaster. Let's start over. And this time, maybe we leave the eggshells out of the recipe. Can we put chocolate chips in instead? Sophie asks. Absolutely. I say, because life's too short for plain pancakes and too precious to waste on people who don't appreciate what they have. Outside, it's starting to rain. But inside our house, our actual home now, not just the place where we used to live, it's warm and safe and exactly where we belong. Not my baby, not my problem, but these kids. This life we're building together. This peace we've found in the aftermath of someone else's spectacularly bad decisions. This is all mine, and I'm never letting anyone take it away from us again. Story 2. She asked me for money to cover rent, then turned around and lent it to her male best friend. I just smiled, but when she came back weeks later looking for more, what she found instead ended everything. I'm the kind of guy who believes that in a relationship, you're a team. You help each other out when things get tough. At least that's what I thought until about a month ago. Now I realize that for some people, you're not a teammate, you're just a resource they haven't drained yet. My girlfriend Jenna and I had been together for about a year. We didn't live together, which was a conscious choice. I liked my space, she liked hers. It worked, or so I thought. About a month back, she called me, and she was in a total panic. She was crying, saying her boss had cut her hours at the last minute and she was going to be short on rent. She said she was about $1,200 short, and her landlord was a real jerk who didn't accept late payments. She sounded genuinely distressed. I don't know what I'm going to do, she said between sobs. He's going to evict me. I'm so embarrassed to even ask, but could you possibly help me out? I'll pay you back with my next 2 paychecks, I swear. I'm not made of money, but I'm careful with it. I had savings and I cared about her. The thought of her getting kicked out of her apartment made my stomach turn. Of course, I was going to help. Don't worry about it, I told her. I've got you. We're a team, remember? I transferred the $1,200 to her account that same day. The relief in her voice was huge. She couldn't thank me enough. I felt good about it. I felt like I'd done the right thing for someone I loved. Fast forward about a week. I was out for a beer with a mutual friend, Mark. We were just catching up when he mentioned Jenna's best friend, a guy named Leo. I was never a huge fan of Leo. He always seemed like one of those guys who never quite grew up, always chasing some get-rich-quick scheme or a new passion that required expensive gear. Mark said, "Man, Leo is lucky to have a friend like Jenna. Did you see that new camera he bought? He's been wanting it for months. Told me Jenna floated him the cash so he could finally get it. Must have been over $1,000. I just sat there holding my beer and my brain kind of short-circuited. I tried to keep my face neutral. Oh, really? That's cool. When did he get that? Mark took a sip of his beer. I think like last Tuesday or Wednesday. He was posting pictures with it all over his social media. The same day I sent Jenna the rent money. It all clicked into place. The sob story, the panic, the exact amount. It wasn't for rent. It was for Leo. She had played me. She took money I worked hard for. Money she claimed she desperately needed to keep a roof over her head, and handed it right over to her deadbeat best friend so he could buy a new toy. I felt a surge of anger so hot it almost made me dizzy, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to call her screaming. What good would that do? She'd just cry, make up another lie, and turn it around on me for not trusting her. No, this required a different approach. When I saw her that weekend, I didn't say a word about it. I just smiled. She was all smiles too, telling me how her landlord was so relieved she paid on time. I just nodded along, listening to the lies pour out of her mouth. And in that moment I knew we were done. The relationship was over. She just didn't know it yet. I decided right then that I was going to get my money back. Not just the money, but I was going to get the truth out in the open. She used me, and she used my trust as a weapon against me. The only way to deal with someone like that is to let them walk right into a trap of their own making. I knew, as sure as I was sitting there, that she'd be back for more money eventually. People like Jenna and Leo are always in a crisis. Their lives are a revolving door of self-inflicted emergencies. All I had to do was be patient and wait. And when she came back, I'd be ready. Update 1. It's been about 5 weeks since the whole rent money incident. For the past month, I've been playing a very careful game. I didn't pull away completely, but I subtly started to change the dynamic between us. When she'd suggest going out for a nice dinner, I'd say I was trying to save money and suggest we cook at home. When she'd drop hints about some new shoes she wanted, I'd conveniently change the subject. I was slowly turning off the financial tap, making myself seem less like an open wallet. I needed her to believe I was just being frugal, not that I was onto her. As I predicted, the financial problems in her life started to pile up. Without my casual funding of our dates and her constant funding of Leo's lifestyle, her budget was clearly getting tight. I could see the stress building in her. And then last Tuesday, I got the call I had been waiting for. It was Jenna, and she sounded even more frantic than last time. "You are not going to believe my luck," she started, her voice already shaky. "My car just completely died on the highway. I had to get it towed, and the mechanic just called. The transmission is shot. It's going to be at least $900 to fix. I don't have it. I literally don't know how I'm going to get to work." It was almost comical, the second verse of the same song. She hit all the right notes. The sudden disaster, the specific amount of money needed, the helplessness. She finished with the line I knew was coming. "I hate to ask you again. I'm so embarrassed. But could you possibly help me out? I'm desperate." I took a breath. "Showtime." "Wow, that's terrible," I said, putting just the right amount of concern in my voice. "Of course I want to help. This is serious. Listen, come over to my place tonight around 7. We'll sit down, figure it out, and I'll write you a check." She was so relieved she was practically crying. "Oh my God, thank you. You're literally saving my life." "Don't worry about it," I said. "That's what I'm here for." As soon as I hung up with her, I made my second call. I found Leo's number in my phone from a group chat we'd been in months ago. I sent him a text. "Hey Leo, it's Alex, Jenna's boyfriend. Quick question for you. Do you still have that camera you bought last month, the really nice one?" He texted back a minute later. "Yeah man, it's awesome." "Why?" I replied. "Great. I'm thinking of getting into photography and I'd love to see it. Maybe get your opinion before I buy one. Would you be able to swing by my place tonight around 7:15? I'll buy you a beer for your trouble." He jumped at the chance to show off his gear and get a free beer. "For sure, dude. See you then." The trap was set. That evening I was calm. I felt like I was watching a movie that I had written and directed. Jenna arrived right at 7, a worried look on her face. She came in and gave me a hug. "Thank you so much for doing this. You're the best." "Of course," I said, leading her to the living room. "Have a seat. Let's talk about the car." She launched into the whole story again, adding extra details about the tow truck driver and the shady mechanic. I just nodded along, letting her dig the hole a little deeper. Right on cue at 7:15, my doorbell rang. Jenna looked confused. "Are you expecting someone, just a friend?" I said, getting up to answer the door. I opened it and there was Leo. Camera bag slung over his shoulder, a big grin on his face. "Hey man, what's up?" His smile vanished the second he saw Jenna sitting on my couch. Her jaw literally dropped. The look of pure panic in her eyes was exactly what I had been waiting a month to see. I closed the door behind him. "Leo, thanks for coming." "Jenna, look who it is. What a coincidence." They both just stared at each other, then at me. They knew something was wrong. I walked back to the center of the room and looked at them both. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated the facts. "Jenna, you came here tonight because you need $900 to fix your car. That's a tough spot to be in, especially since you're still paying me back the $1,200 I lent you for rent last month." I paused, letting that hang in the air. "The thing is," I continued, turning to Leo. "I was talking to Leo here, and he just bought this amazing new camera. Cost about $1,200, I think. He bought it the same day you were having your rent emergency, Jenna." Jenna's face went white. Leo looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I kept going, my voice still perfectly level. "So I was thinking we're all friends here. We can solve this problem together. Jenna needs money for her car. And Leo, you have the $1,200 that Jenna lent you, the money I lent her for rent. So the simplest solution is for you to just pay her back right now. Then she can pay the mechanic and I don't have to lend her any more money. Everybody wins." The silence in the room was deafening. They were both completely and utterly caught. Jenna finally found her voice and it was shaky with rage. "What is this? Did you set this up? Are you checking up on me?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm just connecting the dots. You lied to me. You took money you claimed you needed to avoid being homeless and you gave it to your friend to buy a toy. That's not a partnership. That's not a team. That's just using me. And I'm done being used. Leo started stammering. Dude, I didn't know. She told me you guys were fine with it, that you wanted to help me out. Jenna whipped her head around to look at him. You told me you were going to pay me back in a week. It was beautiful. They immediately turned on each other, the lies unraveling in real time. He was a mooch and she was a liar. And they were both furious that their little scheme had been exposed. I let them argue for another minute, then I held up my hand. Enough. I don't care about the details of your arrangement. All I care about is that my involvement is over. Jenna, we're done. Don't call me. Don't text me. And Leo, enjoy the camera. You both deserve each other. I pointed to the door. Both of you get out of my apartment. Now they left, not even looking at each other on the way out. As I closed the door behind them, I felt nothing but relief. The drama, the lies, the disrespect. It was all over, and it had ended on my terms. Final update. It's been about 3 months since I kicked Jenna and Leo out of my apartment. I figured I owed you guys a final update on how everything shook out. The silence from her was immediate and absolute, but the consequences of her actions took a little longer to fully bloom. First off, after that night, I blocked her number and all of her social media accounts. I wanted a clean break. No chance for her to try and spin some new sob story. A couple of weeks later, though, I started getting texts from her friends, mostly her best friend Amy. They were all the same. Jenna is a mess. You were so cruel to her. You humiliated her. She made a mistake. You need to talk to her. I only responded to one, to Amy. I wrote back. Jenna lied to me and took $1,200 under false pretenses. She prioritized her friend's new toy over her own financial security and our relationship's trust. What happened was not cruelty. It was a consequence. Please don't contact me about her again. The messages stopped after that. But the part I know you're waiting for is about the money. I wasn't gonna just let $1,200 go. It wasn't about the amount. It was about the principle of the thing. She didn't just take my money. She stole my trust. So I took a half day off from work and went down to the county courthouse. I filed a small claims case against her for the $1,200. In the filing, I was factual. I attached a copy of the bank transfer from my account to hers. I attached a printout of the text messages where she asked for rent money and promised to pay me back. I even attached a screenshot of one of Leo's public social media posts where he thanked an unnamed angel for the cash for his new camera, posted the day after I sent the money. The evidence was straightforward. A court date was set for about a month later. She was served the papers. I honestly didn't know if she would show up. Part of me almost hoped she would, just to see what kind of story she would try to tell a judge. She didn't show up. I stood there in the courtroom, presented my evidence to the judge, and because she wasn't there to contest it, I won a default judgment for the full amount plus my court filing fees. I now had a legally binding document that said she owed me the money. Getting the money from a judgment isn't always easy, but her actions made it simpler. I knew where she worked. I filed for a wage garnishment. It took a few weeks for the paperwork to go through, but then it started. A certain percentage of her paycheck was automatically sent to me every 2 weeks until the debt was paid in full. There was nothing she could do about it. Every payday, she got a little reminder of the consequences of her lie. As for her life, I've heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. Her friendship with Leo completely imploded, just as I expected. He never paid her back, and once her personal bank was no longer open for business, he lost interest in being her best friend. He was a user, plain and simple. Without my help, and with a chunk of her paycheck being garnished to pay me back, Jenna's financial situation got really bad. The car trouble she had invented became a real problem when she couldn't afford other repairs that came up. About a month ago, Mark told me that she had to break her lease, pay a massive fee, and move back in with her parents in another state. So in the end, her lie became her reality. She cried to me about the fake threat of losing her apartment, and just a few months later, she actually did lose her apartment because of the real consequences of that lie. She lost her boyfriend, her best friend, her financial independence, and her place to live. All for a camera. I got my last garnishment payment about a week ago. The full $1,200 plus fees. It's not even about the money. It's about the fact that I refuse to be a victim. I didn't yell, I didn't rage, I just calmly and legally held her accountable. She thought I was a pushover, an easy mark. She found out I'm not. She learned that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences come with court-ordered paperwork. And me. I'm doing great. My savings account is back where it should be, and my life is free of drama. Best $1,200 I ever spent. It was the cost of a valuable lesson, and the price of getting a liar out of my life for good. Story 3, you're so desperate to settle down, she said, canceling our wedding a week before the date to go find herself. I gave all her stuff to charity. She just came back, heartbroken and pregnant from a fling, and wants me to be the father. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The week before the wedding was supposed to be a blur of nervous excitement. Instead, it was a slow-motion car crash. We were sitting in the living room of our two-bedroom apartment, a space I'd spent the last 4 years building a life in. A life with her. We had the final seating chart printout spread across the coffee table, a testament to how close we were. The wedding was Friday. It was Sunday. I just can't do this, Mark. Emily said the words so casually, as if she were canceling a dinner reservation. The sound of her voice made the small hairs on my arms stand up. I looked up from the seating chart, my mind still trying to put my great-aunt Mildred next to my college roommate, Dave, a combination I was sure would end in either an epic friendship or a restraining order. "Do what, babe? You don't like the flower arrangement?" I asked, a laugh still in my throat. We'd been arguing about P and E's versus dahlias all week. She sighed, a long, weary exhalation that was just a little too theatrical. "No, the wedding, us, the whole thing." The blood drained from my face. My hands, which had been holding a red pen, trembled slightly. I put it down on the table, the small click echoing in the sudden silence. I thought this was some kind of elaborate, sick joke, a prank. She'd always been a bit dramatic. "What are you talking about, Emily? The invitations are out. The venue is paid for. My parents are flying in from out of state on Wednesday." "I know," she said, her voice a little softer but still completely devoid of real emotion. I'm not ready for a life with a picket fence and a 9 to 5. My jaw clenched. A few years ago, when she was struggling to find a job after college, I'd picked up a second gig to cover her half of the rent. I'd cooked every dinner, paid for every date, and done everything in my power to give her the space and time to find herself and figure out her passions. When she'd finally landed a job as a graphic designer, it was a huge relief, but she still saw my steady, stable career as boring. "A picket fence, a 9 to 5, I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "You mean a home and a stable life, Emily? Is that what you're calling it now?" "Because that's what we both wanted. That's what we've been building for 5 years. She stood up and walked to the window, avoiding my gaze. "I'm just not you. You're so desperate to settle down. You've been ready for this since we first started dating. I need to travel, to experience things, to live." The word desperate felt like a physical blow. It was her dismissal of everything I'd done, everything I'd planned, all of my love and commitment boiled down to a pathetic character flaw. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice flat. "You're leaving? A week before our wedding?" She finally turned to look at me, a cruel, smug expression on her face. "I'm just not in love with you anymore. I'm sorry. I just can't be held back by someone who wants to play it so safe." I stared at her, feeling my heart crack. The woman I had committed my life to, the woman who was supposed to be my future, was standing in our living room, telling me I was too committed, too loving, too safe. I saw the packed duffel bag sitting by the front door. She had it all planned out. She was so smug about her escape, about her newfound freedom. A wave of pure, unfiltered shock and pain washed over me. I wanted to yell. I wanted to beg. I wanted to demand answers, to ask if there was someone else, if this was just a passing phase. But as I opened my mouth, no words came out. I just stared at her. The beautiful, treacherous woman who had just ripped my world apart. "Okay," was all I could manage to say. It was a single hollow word. She gave a small, relieved smile. "I'll pack the rest of my stuff later. Don't worry about anything. I'll get it all taken care of." But her words didn't land. All I could think about was my quiet, dignified exit. I stood up, walked to our bedroom, and came back with my keys and my wallet. I looked at the seating chart, the symbol of everything that was now gone. And then I looked at Emily, a stranger in my home. I simply turned, opened the front door, and walked away. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even get in my car right away. I just walked, the late afternoon sun warm on my skin. I walked until I found a park bench and sat down. I pulled out my phone, went to my contacts, and scrolled to her name. Emily, the tiny picture of her smiling face taken a year ago at the beach, felt like a punch to the gut. I hovered over the block button, then closed my phone. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She wanted drama. I was going to give her silence. For 2 days, I lived out of a suitcase in a friend's spare room. I didn't tell him why I was there, only that I needed a place to crash for a while. He was an old college buddy, a man who understood when to ask questions and when to just let it be. He didn't ask. I spent those days canceling the catering, the photographer, the DJ. Each phone call was a new, cold reminder of what was gone. I told them there had been a change of plans, and they all offered their sympathies, which felt like salt in an open wound. When I finally went back to the apartment, she was gone. She hadn't even bothered to pack all her things, just the essentials. Her designer clothes were missing, but the ugly sweaters she'd had since high school were still there. Her expensive shoes were gone, but the pair of beat-up old sneakers were still by the door. It was a clear message. She'd only taken the things she thought were valuable and left the rest for me to deal with. A strange calm settled over me. There was no anger, just a quiet sense of finality. I went through her closet and her dresser, pulling out everything she had left behind. Her old books, her cheap jewelry, her family photos. I put it all in trash bags, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Instead, I drove to the local Goodwill. As I pulled up to the donation door, a volunteer, a kind, older woman, came out to help me. "Looks like a lot of stuff," she said, smiling gently. "Spring cleaning, something like that." I said, a hollow smile on my face, just clearing out the past. I spent the next few weeks in a fog. The silence in the apartment was deafening. My friends tried to reach out, but I kept my distance. I wasn't ready to talk about it, not with the hurt still so fresh and raw. I needed to be alone. I needed to rebuild myself before I could face anyone else. I started looking at real estate listings, not for a new apartment but for a house, a real house, a place to start over from scratch on my own terms. I found a small, neglected bungalow just outside the city. It had a big yard, a beautiful old oak tree in the front, and a lot of problems. I put a down payment on it with the money I had saved for the wedding. It was a tangible, defiant act of reclaiming my future. I began renovating it myself. The physical labor was a welcome distraction. I tore down old drywall, ripped up linoleum, and sanded down ancient wooden floors. Every swing of the hammer, every coat of paint, was a small, satisfying step toward building something new. I was no longer a man defined by a broken engagement. I was a man building his own house, his own life. The apartment was still a ghost, but the bungalow was slowly becoming a home. I didn't think about Emily. I didn't want to know where she was or who she was with. Her chapter of my life was closed. The book donated to charity. I was a man who had lost everything, but I was also a man who had been given an empty canvas. I was ready to paint. A year passed. My life was almost unrecognizable, and I loved every minute of it. The bungalow was now a home. The peeling paint was gone, replaced by a deep gray that made the white trim pop. The floors gleamed. The yard was filled with the flowers I had always wanted to plant. A vibrant, chaotic mess of color and life. It was mine entirely. My days were a satisfying rhythm of work, renovation, and peace. The pain of the breakup had dulled into a quiet memory, a lesson learned. One Tuesday, while I was sitting on my newly built back deck enjoying a beer, a text message came in from an unknown number. "Hey Mark, how have you been?" I stared at the words, a chill running down my spine. The way she wrote it, tentative, familiar, but from a number I didn't know, could only mean one person. I didn't respond. I just deleted the message and blocked the number. I wasn't going to let her back in. A few weeks later, another text came through from a different number. This one was more desperate. "Mark, please don't ignore me. I know I messed up. Can we talk?" Again, I deleted it. Then, a few days after that, a call came from her mom. I hadn't spoken to her in a year, and her voice was a little strained. "Mark, honey, it's Susan. Emily is going through a hard time. She could really use a friend right now. She's so lost." I felt a surge of anger, not at her, but at the audacity of it all. I had to choose my words carefully. "Susan, I wish you all the best, but Emily and I haven't spoken in a year." We're not friends. I've moved on. But Mark, she's got some news for you. She's not doing so well. Things didn't go as planned. That's her responsibility, not mine. I said, my voice firm. I wish you both well, but I can't be a part of her life. Goodbye, Susan. I hung up and blocked her number, too. They were all toxic, just in different ways. Then came the final gut punch text from yet another number. It was just a picture, a grainy sonogram image. Below it, 2 words, I'm pregnant. A second text followed immediately. He left me. He said he wasn't ready to settle down just like I was. Mark, please, I need you. I know you're the only one who can be a good father. I was wrong. Let's make this right. There it was. The grand, ironic, karmic justice of it all. The man she'd left me for, the one who was supposed to give her an exciting, adventurous life, had discarded her justice. She had discarded me. And now she was turning to the man she'd called desperate to settle down, to clean up her mess. She wanted me to step in and be a father to a child that wasn't mine. I didn't respond. The silence was the only answer she deserved. 3 weeks passed in silence. I didn't hear from her again. I was enjoying a peaceful Sunday morning, sitting in my living room with my new dog, a goofy golden retriever puppy named Cooper, when I heard a knock on the door. It was a firm but hesitant knock, not the kind of knock a delivery driver makes. I opened the door and saw her. Emily, she looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed, and her clothes were a little disheveled. She was obviously pregnant, a small but noticeable bump beneath her coat. She stood on my porch, a nervous smile on her face, but her eyes held a desperate, needy look. Her gaze swept past me to the interior of my home, the custom bookshelves I had built, the warm glow of the fireplace, the new wooden floors. Her eyes widened, a flicker of shock and regret crossing her face. Mark, she said, her voice thin, I can't believe it. This place looks amazing. Is this yours? I nodded once. What do you want, Emily? She took a step forward as if to come inside, but I didn't move. I kept the door half closed, a clear barrier between us. I came to talk to you. You didn't respond to my texts. No, I didn't, I said, my voice flat. I thought my silence was pretty clear. She started to cry, real tears this time. I know, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. He just left. He told me he wasn't ready to be a dad and he just disappeared. I was so stupid. He wasn't a real man like you. A real man who you left a week before our wedding, I said, a flicker of amusement in my voice. A man who was desperate to settle down. That was your exact quote, wasn't it? Her face crumpled. I was an idiot. I was selfish and I didn't know what I had. But I'm back now. And I need you, Mark. I need you to be the father this baby deserves. You've always wanted to settle down. This is our second chance. She tried to appeal to my past self, the man she knew, the man who had been a devoted partner, the man who would have been thrilled at the thought of a family. But that man was gone. He was still me, but he had evolved. He was no longer the guy who would fix someone else's mess. Emily, listen to me. I said, my voice quiet but firm. I didn't show anger or sympathy, just a kind of detached finality. That part of my life is over. I've moved on. You left me because you didn't want the life I was building, so I built one for myself alone, and it's better than I ever could have imagined. I have my own home, a great dog and peace. You're a part of my past, and you're not a part of my future. I don't need you, and I certainly don't need the consequences of your exciting life. I'm happy for the first time in a long time. I want to apologize for that. I looked at her and she finally saw it, the complete total emotional distance. I wasn't angry, I wasn't hurt. She was simply a stranger on my porch, holding a past I had long since discarded. Goodbye, Emily, I said softly, and without another word I closed the door. I locked it, a final, definitive click. Cooper came over and nudged my hand, wanting a pat. I knelt down and scratched his ear. Life was good. It was so good. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments. Story 4. After a fight, my fiancé texted, I'm staying at my ex's place tonight. Deal with it. So I dealt with it. The next morning, I watched her lose her mind. Sup, Reddit. Where do I start? Lol, this one is a real mess. I need you to grab some popcorn and enjoy. I'm a 29-year-old male, a union electrician. I make good money, own my apartment downtown, and drive a decent truck. Been with Brianna, 26, for almost 3 years. She's a content marketing manager, makes decent cash, is attractive, and for the longest time we were that couple everyone envied. The relationship was solid for the first 2 years. She had her own place across town. We split everything 50-50. She never acted like I owed her anything. Independent, funny, great in bed. We'd roast each other constantly, watch football together. She'd even help me move furniture without complaining about breaking a nail. I thought I'd found my ride or die. So naturally I proposed. Took her to that fancy steakhouse she loved, got down on one knee, the whole thing. Spent 3 months' salary on the ring because she'd been dropping hints about wanting something that would make her friends jealous. She cried, said yes, and posted 17 Instagram stories about it. I was on top of the world. That's when everything went to heck. It's like the ring flipped some switch in her brain. Suddenly, she's talking about our money. Instead of splitting bills, started expecting me to pick up every check because that's what fiancés do. Stopped cooking. Stopped cleaning. Started treating my apartment like a hotel where she happened to crash rent-free. Even had the nerve to suggest I should get a bigger place for when we have kids. Started talking about how I should invest in our future by upgrading my truck to something more family-friendly. She wanted me to take on a $60,000 car payment so she could look good in the school pickup line. But the real poison was her best friend, Betty. Single. Bitter. Works some dead-end admin job and spends her free time destroying every relationship around her. Betty, Brianna's maid of honor since the engagement, made it her personal mission to turn Brianna into some entitled princess. Every time Betty came over, I'd hear whispers in the kitchen over coffee. Then, Brianna would emerge with some new demand. Betty says you should be paying for the entire wedding since you're the man. Betty thinks I deserve a bigger ring. Betty says I shouldn't have to work after we're married. Each conversation cost me more money and respect. The worst part, Betty would sit on my couch, drinking my soda, eating my food, and lecture me about how real men treat their women. This from someone who'd been single for 3 years and whose last boyfriend left her for her own cousin. I called it out directly, told Brianna that Betty was toxic and trying to sabotage us because she couldn't stand seeing her friend happy. "You're being paranoid," Brianna said. "She just wants what's best for me." "What's best for you is getting away from that bitter harpy before she ruins us." Betty overheard and smiled this fake sweet smile. "I just think Brianna deserves someone who treats her like a queen. If that threatens you, maybe ask yourself why." I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought, but I kept my mouth shut. Should have trusted my gut and ended it then. Should have seen the red flags when Brianna started nodding along instead of defending me. The breaking point came 6 weeks ago. Brianna announces she wants to go on a girls' trip to Miami with Betty and some other friends. Week-long party fest. Bottle service every night. Staying at some fancy resort 2 months before our wedding. "It's my bachelorette party," she says. "My last chance to be wild before I settle down." You're not settling down. You're getting married to me. There's a difference. You know what I mean? Don't be so dramatic. No, I really don't know what you mean. Explain it. She got defensive, said I was being controlling, that she deserved to have fun before real life started. Real life. Like our engagement was just some holding pattern before the prison sentence began. I told her absolutely not. Call me old school, but there's no way in heck my fiancé was going to party in Miami clubs while I paid for wedding deposits and vendor contracts. That's when Betty chimed in from the couch. "See, Bri, I told you he'd try to control you. This is just the beginning." The fight that followed was nuclear. Brianna screaming about trust and freedom. Me pointing out that wanting to party like you're single while wearing my ring isn't about trust. It's about respect. Betty sitting there stirring the pot with little comments designed to escalate everything. "Fine," Brianna finally screamed. "If you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't get married. Maybe we shouldn't." She went dead silent like she expected me to grovel and apologize. When I didn't, she grabbed her purse and stormed out. Didn't come home that night or the next. I figured she was at Betty's place, waiting for me to come crawling back with an apology and permission for her little Miami mess. Instead, I went to work, hit the gym, ordered takeout, and slept like a baby. If she wanted to test me, she picked the wrong guy. 3 years as an electrician teaches you patience and problem solving. Wednesday night, I found out exactly where she'd been staying. Wednesday night, I'm on the couch watching the Celtics game and actually enjoying the peace and quiet. No Betty whispering poison in the kitchen. No passive-aggressive comments about how I never do anything romantic anymore. Just me, a soda, and basketball. Then my phone buzzes, text from Brianna. I'm at Dean's place tonight. Deal with it. Dean, her ex from college. The one she claims is just a friend, but gets weird whenever his name comes up. The one who randomly texts her whenever we have a fight. I'd met him once. Typical finance bro type who still thinks he's in a fraternity. I stared at that message for a full minute. Read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things. My first instinct was to blow up her phone, demand explanations, drive over there, and drag her butt home. That's what the old me would have done. That's what she expected me to do. Instead, I set the phone down, cracked another can, took a long drink, and really thought about what just happened. This woman, who's wearing my $8,000 ring, just announced she's spending the night at her ex-boyfriend's place and told me to deal with it after letting her toxic friend spend months undermining our relationship. The disrespect was breathtaking, but it was also clarifying, like someone had just shown me exactly who they really were. I finished my drink, turned off the game, and got to work. See, here's something important about my apartment. It's mine, my name on the lease, my security deposit, my furniture, my everything. I pay $20,400 a month for a 1-bedroom downtown because I can afford it and I like living alone. Brianna moved in 8 months ago and contributed to groceries and utilities. That's it. She was basically a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. Time for checkout. I started packing her stuff. Not angry, not rushed. Her clothes, makeup, that collection of plants she was always fussing over, her books, everything. Used good boxes from recent Amazon deliveries. Even bubble wrapped the fragile stuff because I'm not a complete jerk. The whole time my phone stayed silent. No follow-up texts, no apology, no just kidding. Nothing. She really meant it. 3.5 hours later, every single thing she owned was packed and loaded in my truck. The funny part, I knew exactly where Dean lived. Brianna had me drop her off there once for some group study session a few months back, told me not to come up because Dean's roommate doesn't like strangers. Should have been a red flag then. Made 4 trips between midnight and 2 a.m., stacked everything neatly outside Dean's apartment door like a professional moving service. Even left a note. Since you're staying here anyway, Jackson. Drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. Went to Home Depot first thing in the morning and bought smart locks, installed them myself while drinking coffee and listening to podcasts. Took my time, did it right. Went to work like it was any other Thursday because it was. Around lunchtime, my boy Riley texted me. He lives in Dean's complex, works from home doing freelance graphic design, has zero filter and the sharpest tongue in the city. Yo, just saw some chick loading boxes into an Uber outside Dean's place. She looked rough. Is everything good? I sent him screenshots of the text exchange. Holy crap, dude, that's some next-level disrespect. Yep, so I dealt with it. Savage, want me to keep an eye on the situation over here? This could get interesting. Do whatever you want, not my circus anymore. My work crew got wind of the situation by Friday. These guys don't mess around when it comes to relationship advice. You kicked her out for one text, asked Danny, our lead installer. She told me to deal with her staying at her ex's place, so I dealt with it. Darn right, said Big Sean, nodding approvingly. That's some alpha move right there. Most guys would have gone crying to her door. My wife tried that kind of power play once, Danny added. I shut it down quickly. You let them get away with that stuff, they'll walk all over you forever. But I was definitely curious about how this would play out, and Riley never disappoints with his intel. Thursday night, I slept like a baby. First full night's sleep I'd had in weeks, without someone sighing dramatically every 5 minutes about wedding planning stress, or how her friends' engagements were so much more romantic. Friday morning, 7:45 a.m. Sharp, sounds like someone's trying to break down my door. Look through the peephole. It's Brianna looking like she'd slept in a dumpster. Hair everywhere. Yesterday's makeup streaked down her face, shaking with rage. Jackson, opened this door. My key doesn't work. I took my time making coffee first. French press, good beans, the whole ritual. Let her pound and scream for a good 5 minutes while I checked work emails. When I finally cracked the door, keeping the chain latched, she looked ready to commit murder. Morning, sunshine, sleep well. What did you do to my key? Your key. That was my spare key that I let you borrow. I upgraded the locks. Only residents get the codes. I'm a resident. We're past tense. You moved out Wednesday night. Remember Dean's place? Her face went through this amazing transformation. Red to white to purple to a shade I didn't know existed. Like watching a mood ring have a seizure. You can't do this. I live here. I get mail here. You get packages here occasionally. Big difference. And you lived here as my guest, not as a tenant. It wasn't what you think. Dean's roommate was having a crisis and, don't care, you made your choice, I made mine. Pretty simple transaction, really. Oh, where's all my stuff? Safe and sound outside Dean's door. Better hurry, though, looks like it might rain. Weather app says 60% chance. That's when she completely lost her mind. Started screaming like a banshee, pounding on the door, demanding everything from lawyers to calling her daddy to ruining my life. The old lady from 4B opened her door to see what was happening, took one look at Brianna having her meltdown, and shook her head with this, "I told you son" expression. That lady never liked Brianna. Said she was too entitled for such a young woman. "You psychopath, I have rights. I've been living here for 8 months. Now you're not. Have a great day, Brianna." Closed the door and put on noise-canceling headphones. Made breakfast while she continued her tantrum in the hallway. Scrambled eggs, fresh orange juice. 20 minutes later, silence. Looked out the peephole, she was gone. Riley called around noon, laughing his butt off. "Dude, your ex showed up at Dean's with red eyes and mascara everywhere. Starts loading boxes into an Uber. But here's the kicker. Dean's got a girlfriend." Silence. "What?" "Yeah, man, Jessica. She's been living there for 6 months." Apparently, the roommate crisis was Jessica finding out some other chick had spent the night, and was claiming to be Dean's friend who needed a place to crash. This kept getting better. So Jessica comes home from her night shift, she's a nurse, finds your ex's stuff piled outside the door, and Brianna inside making a breakfast like she owns the place. The screaming match could be heard 3 floors down. No way. The building manager had to come up and sort it out. Dean's trying to explain to both women. Jessica's threatening to leave. And your ex is crying about being homeless. It was better than reality TV. Get this. Brianna actually tried to convince Jessica that she was Dean's emotional support friend and needed to stay for her mental health. Jessica told Brianna if she wasn't gone in 5 minutes, she was calling the cops. Where is she now? Betty picked her up in some beat-up car. But Jessica made Dean promise that if your ex shows up again, he's calling the cops. She doesn't play games, smart woman, but I had a feeling this was just the beginning. Friday afternoon, I get a call from building security. "Mr. Jackson, there's someone here claiming to be your fiancé who wants us to let her up. She's not my fiancé anymore. Don't let her up. She's, pretty upset about that." Making quite a scene in the lobby. Something about her rights and how you're stealing from her. Not my problem. Thanks, Tony. But Saturday brought a whole new level of crazy that I wasn't prepared for. Saturday morning, I'm enjoying coffee and scrolling through my phone when Tony from building security calls. "Jackson, you need to come down to the lobby. Now your ex is here with some older guy and a middle-aged woman claiming they have legal rights to enter your apartment. Be right down." I throw on clothes and head downstairs. There's Brianna with her dad, Richard, and her mom, Grace, looking like they're ready for war. Richard's holding a manila folder and wearing his "I mean business" expression. Grace is standing with her arms crossed, the "I want to speak to your manager" pose. Brianna's dressed up like she's going to court. Tony wouldn't let them up without my permission. Guy is a former Marine, doesn't take crap from anyone. Richard starts immediately. "Jackson, what's this nonsense about making my daughter homeless?" "Morning, Richard." "Grace." I nod to her. "I didn't make anyone homeless. I ended our engagement after she chose to spend the night at her ex's place and told me to deal with it." Grace jumps in before Richard can respond. "You can't just throw people out. She has rights, she's been living here. As my guest, Grace never signed a lease, never paid rent, never established legal residency. That's ridiculous. She was practically your wife." I pull out my phone, show them the screenshot. "I'm at Dean's place tonight, deal with it. That's not how wives talk to husbands." Richard's eye twitches. Grace's mouth drops open. She explained that it was innocent, Richard says. "You're overreacting." "That's not explaining, Richard, that's a declaration of war." Grace tries the guilt angle. "She made one mistake, one text. You're destroying her life over nothing." "She destroyed her own life with that text. I just responded accordingly." Richard's folder comes out. "We're prepared to file suit for illegal eviction and theft. Please do." "I'd love to show a judge the text where your daughter announced she was staying elsewhere and the building security footage of me peacefully moving her belongings. Also happy to provide documentation that she was never on any lease, never received mail here and never established legal residency. The folder goes back down. Richard realizes they're screwed. That's when Brianna tries the manipulation route. Tears start flowing. Voice gets all breathy and pathetic. "Baby, please, this is crazy. I made one mistake. One text. We can fix this. We just did fix it. You're free to stay wherever you want. And I'm free from someone who thinks deal with it is appropriate communication with their fiancé. I didn't mean it like that." Right. Grace is getting red-faced. "You're being cruel. She's devastated. Look at her." I looked at her and she looked like a snotty raccoon having a meltdown. Too late. People make mistakes. Some mistakes have consequences, Grace. This is what consequences look like. Grace turns to Tony, our security guard. "You heard him. He's being abusive. You need to let us up there." Tony, stone-faced. "Ma'am, I heard a man exercise his legal right to remove someone from his own apartment. If you keep yelling, I'm calling the police." Richard realizes they're not getting anywhere. "Come on, Brianna. We'll figure something else out." As they're leaving, I hear Grace hiss, "I can't believe you're not making him give her money." And Brianna's response was, "He's supposed to take care of me. That's what men do." The look of pure shock on Richard's face when he heard his daughter's entitlement was worth everything I'd been through. But Sunday brought the nuclear option. And that's when I stopped finding any of this funny. Sunday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from random numbers, not Brianna. I blocked her after the lobby confrontation. These were from mutual friends, all asking the same question. What the heck is happening? Checked social media. Oh, it was a masterpiece. Brianna had posted this 3-paragraph sob story on Facebook about being suddenly abandoned by someone she trusted completely. How I'd become controlling and abusive after the engagement. How she was homeless and terrified because of my violent tendencies. Even threw in some nonsense about me monitoring her phone and isolating her from friends. Real victim here. Betty was leading the charge in the comments like some deranged PR manager. I always knew he had anger issues. Brianna is so brave for speaking out. Jackson fooled us all, but I never trusted him. The echo chamber was in full effect with her flying monkeys calling me every name in the book. But here's where Betty made her first mistake. She started her own Facebook post about supporting survivors and how she'd always seen the red flags with me. Posted photos from our double dates with captions like, "I should have protected her from this monster." I posted exactly one response. A screenshot of her text and my simple, "okay" reply. Nothing else. Let the evidence speak for itself. The tide started turning in the comments, my friends asking for context, her friends demanding I tell the truth about what I'd done to her. Then Jessica, Dean's girlfriend, dropped a nuclear bomb. "Is this why you showed up at my apartment with boxes claiming to be Dean's girlfriend while I was standing right there after spending the night uninvited?" Post deleted within 10 minutes, but screenshots live forever and about 50 people had already captured it. Betty went full attack dog on her own Facebook posting about how I was manipulating the narrative and gaslighting everyone. The girl was unhinged. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. Monday brought the wellness check. 2 cops at my door looking bored out of their minds. "Sir, we got a call about someone threatening self-harm at this address." Let me guess, my ex-fiancé called it in. We can't say who called, but yeah. Invited them in, made coffee, showed them the text exchange, explained the timeline. So she announced she was staying at her ex's place. You packed her stuff and took it there, and now she's saying you're having a meltdown. That about sums it up. Officers, are you feeling okay? Any thoughts of hurting yourself or others? Officers, I haven't been this happy in months. Just annoyed that she's wasting your time and taxpayer resources with false reports. They documented it as a malicious call and warned me she might escalate. One of them even said, "We see this a lot. X makes bad decisions, faces consequences, then tries to weaponize the system. Keep your documentation handy." Smart advice. Wednesday morning brought something that made me realize this wasn't just petty drama anymore. Credit monitoring alert on my phone. Attempted credit application using your social security number. Someone had tried to open a store credit card in my name, failed because the phone number didn't match my file, but they had my SSN, date of birth, and my old address from college. One guess who? I called the credit company immediately. They confirmed all the details. Attempted $2,000 limit card, all my personal information, wrong phone number. Froze my credit across all 3 bureaus. Then I called the police. The officer taking my statement was the same one from the wellness check. Your ex-fiancée again? Yep, she's escalating. Identity theft's a felony, Jackson. This is serious now. No more games. Filed a formal report. Got a case number. The officer suggested I hire a lawyer and consider a restraining order. This won't be the last attempt. He was right. Thursday, I got notifications that someone was trying to reset my email password, my bank password, even my PlayStation account. All attempts were going to an email address I didn't recognize. Friday, Riley called with an update that had me seeing red. Dude, your psycho ex convinced Dean to let her stay just until she gets back on her feet. That was 3 weeks ago. She's completely taken over their apartment. What do you mean? Rearranged the furniture, threw away Jessica's stuff, keeps talking about how you're going to come to your senses and beg her to come back. She's completely delusional. The audacity was staggering. Jessica's ready to move out. Dean's terrified of both women at this point. Oh, and she tried to order $300 worth of groceries delivered to their place using your credit card. She what? Delivery guy showed up with bags of expensive stuff. Organic this, gluten-free that. The whole Whole Foods experience. Dean had no idea what was going on. When they called the number on the order, it was your card. Dean refused the delivery and reported it to the store. Another felony. Perfect, but wait, it gets better. She's been telling everyone in the building that Dean's her new boyfriend and they're working things out. Posted Instagram stories from his apartment, talking about new beginnings and finding real love. Jessica saw them and went ballistic. That's when I decided it was time to go nuclear. But first, I had some business to take care of. Time to return that $8,000 ring. Monday morning, I hired Nora, a lawyer who specializes in harassment and cyberstalking cases. Found her through a buddy at work whose ex tried similar stuff. Cost me $3,500 up front. But after the credit card fraud attempt, I was done playing games. First thing she did was send cease and desist letters to Brianna, Richard, Grace, Betty, and every flying monkey who'd been harassing me. The letters were beautiful. Outlined everything from the false wellness check to the attempted identity theft. Made it clear that any further contact would result in immediate legal action. Most of Brianna's friends backed off immediately. Richard actually responded through his own lawyer with a formal apology, saying he was unaware of his daughter's escalating behavior and would ensure no further contact. Betty's response was priceless. This is harassment. Brianna is the victim here. Jackson is trying to silence us. Nora fired back with a 2-page letter explaining how criminal law works. Your client's friend has committed multiple felonies. Any further communication from you will be considered obstruction of justice and reported to the appropriate authorities. Radio silence after that. But before we move forward with prosecution, I had one more thing to handle. I asked her about the ring situation. In this state, if the engagement is broken by the recipient, the ring goes back to the giver. It's considered a conditional gift. Perfect. I still had the receipt, the appraisal, and the insurance documentation. Nora drew up a formal demand letter requiring Brianna to return the ring within 72 hours or face civil action for conversion and theft. The letter was delivered to Betty's apartment, where Brianna was still crashing. Tuesday, my phone exploded. Brianna had gotten a burner phone and was calling me from different numbers, screaming about how the ring was hers and I had no right to take it back. You gave it to me. You can't just take it back because you're having a tantrum. Read the letter, Brianna. I'm not giving you anything. This ring is mine. I earned it. You earned it by telling me to deal with you staying at your ex's place. Interesting payment plan. That's when she really lost her mind, started screaming about how she was going to destroy me, how she'd never give the ring back, how I was a psychopath for wanting it. See you in court then. Wednesday, Riley called with the play-by-play. Dude, your ex is having a complete meltdown over here. She's been screaming at Betty about the ring, crying, throwing things. Betty's getting sick of her nonsense. What do you mean? Apparently, Brianna's been treating Betty's place like a hotel, eating all her food, using her car without asking, bringing random dudes back for revenge hookups, leaving messes everywhere. Betty finally snapped and told her to grow up and handle her problems like an adult. Oh no, the sisterhood was cracking. Brianna started crying about how Betty was supposed to support her and be on her side, and Betty told her that supporting someone doesn't mean enabling their delusions. They had a huge fight. Brianna stormed out and Betty changed her locks. Where's she staying now? Back with Mommy and Daddy. But here's the thing. Grace has been calling Betty, screaming about how she abandoned Brianna and ruined her life. Betty posted on Facebook telling Grace to control her psycho daughter before she ends up in jail. The house of cards was collapsing. Thursday brought news that made my day. The DA's office is moving forward with prosecution, Nora said. Multiple counts of identity theft, attempted fraud, filing false reports, and cyberstalking. They want her arrested. When? Tomorrow morning. And Jackson, she still hasn't returned the ring. That's another felony. Theft of property over $5,000 or Lowe's. Christmas came early this year, but Friday brought something that made me realize this wasn't over yet. Friday morning, I'm having coffee when Nora calls. She's been arrested. Multiple felony charges plus the ring theft. But Jackson, there's a problem. What? She claims the ring is lost, says she can't remember where she put it. Either she's lying or she sold it. Great. My investigator is checking local pawn shops and jewelry stores. If she sold it, that's another felony. Saturday, Riley called me, laughing hard. Dude, you're not going to believe this. LMAO. 2 cop cars just pulled up to Betty's apartment complex. Your ex got arrested while she was there begging Betty to take her back. You can't be serious. She's screaming about how this is all your fault. Betty's standing in the doorway telling the cops she doesn't know her. Half the complex is outside watching the show. The mental image was perfect. They just put her in the car. She's still screaming. This is better than Netflix. Oh, and Grace showed up right as they were driving away, started yelling at Betty about how this is her fault for abandoning Brianna. Betty told her to buzz off and slammed the door. 2 hours later, she's been arrested and charged. Bail hearing is Monday. But with multiple felony counts and a pattern of escalating behavior, she'll likely be held until trial. And with her record, she could be looking at 3 to 5 years, if convicted on all counts. The identity theft alone carries mandatory minimums in this state. The next day, word was already spreading through our mutual friend group. My buddy Chris called, laughing. Dude, half the people at my bachelor party heard about Brianna getting arrested. Tommy said his girlfriend saw the mugshot on Facebook. Betty posted it with some sob story about the justice system failing women. Betty posted her mugshot. Yeah, but it backfired. Everyone's commenting about how crazy Brianna looks and asking what she actually did. Betty's trying to control the narrative, but people are Googling the charges. Identity theft. Fraud, stalking. It's all public record now. Monday's bail hearing was a mess. Brianna showed up looking like she'd been living rough, unwashed hair, wrinkled clothes, bags under her eyes. Her public defender argued for release on recognizance, claiming she was a young woman dealing with emotional trauma from an abusive relationship. Right, young woman. The prosecutor laid out the timeline of escalating criminal behavior. False reports. Identity theft, attempted fraud, harassment despite cease and desist orders, attempted employment sabotage, and theft of an $8,000 engagement ring. The judge looked at the evidence for about 30 seconds. Bail set at $50,000. Defendant is ordered to have no contact with the victim and to surrender her passport. Richard had to mortgage his house to get her out. I almost felt bad for the guy. Grace was in the courtroom, making snide comments loud enough for everyone to hear about how I was destroying an innocent girl's life. The bailiff had to tell her to be quiet twice. The restraining order hearing was even better. Brianna's lawyer tried the woman's scorned angle, claiming she was emotionally devastated and not thinking clearly. The judge wasn't buying it. 5-year restraining order granted. Any contact whatsoever results in immediate arrest and jail time. But here's the kicker. Word travels fast in the content marketing world. Getting arrested for cybercrimes when your job requires digital trust, that's career ending. She was fired before she even made bail, and with her criminal charges pending, she's basically blacklisted from the entire industry. No one's hiring someone facing felony cyberstalking charges. 3 months later, she'd moved back in with her parents in Ohio, at 26, living in her childhood bedroom, unemployed, facing felony charges, and still no ring. Nora's investigator found it at a pawn shop downtown. Brianna had sold it for $2,000 on 2 days after I kicked her out. We got it back, and now she's facing an additional charge for selling stolen property. Richard sent one final message through lawyers. A check for $6,200 to cover all the fraudulent charges and my legal fees included a note. I'm ashamed of my daughter's behavior and want to make this right. I kept the money. Richard was a decent guy who got stuck with a nightmare daughter and a wife who enabled her every tantrum. The trial was scheduled for 6 months out, but Brianna's lawyer pushed for a plea deal. 2 years probation, full restitution, mandatory anger management counseling, and the restraining order stays in effect. She took it rather than risk 5 years in prison. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 months into her probation, I started dating Lee, a veterinarian who owns her own practice. Smart, pays her own bills, and has never once told me to deal with anything. That's when Brianna's stalking and harassment kicked into high gear again. 6 months later, I'm doing great, still in my apartment, picked up some overtime shifts that bumped my pay grade, and Lee and I are solid. The Brianna nightmare felt like ancient history until she found out about Lee through social media. Then the harassment started all over again. She created fake Instagram accounts to stalk Lee's veterinary practice page, leaving one-star reviews claiming Lee was unprofessional and stole someone's fiancé. Lee handled it like a champ, screenshotted everything, reported it to the platforms, and told me she wasn't going to let some pathetic ex incomplete as original text cuts off. But Brianna wasn't done. She started showing up at Lee's clinic, claiming she needed to discuss something important with her. Lee's receptionist recognized her from the photos I'd shown and called security every time. Then this happened. The breaking point came at our mutual friend Chris's wedding. I almost didn't go because there was a chance she might show up, but Lee convinced me we shouldn't let my psycho ex incomplete as original text cuts off. She said, "Isn't she supposed to be on probation and banned from contacting you?" Riley met us there. He'd been looking forward to this wedding for weeks, partly because he's friends with Chris, but mostly because he'd been hoping for exactly what ended up happening. The ceremony went fine. Cocktail hour was great. Good food, better drinks, people I hadn't seen in ages. I was finally relaxing when Riley grabbed my arm with this evil grin. "Dude, don't look now, but guess who just stumbled in looking like a complete disaster?" I looked anyway. There she was, weaving through the entrance in a wrinkled dress that looked like she'd slept in it, clearly intoxicated. "Oh, this is about to be legendary," Riley said, pulling out his phone. "I'm getting all of this. This is going straight to the group chat." Brianna spotted me across the room and made a beeline, knocking over a centerpiece and stepping on someone's foot along the way. "Jackson," she slurred, loud enough for the entire reception to hear. "There you are. I knew you'd be here." Conversations died. Heads turned. Phones came out. The DJ actually turned the music down. "Leave. There's a restraining order and you're violating your probation. Screw your restraining order. I came here to talk to you to make you understand." Lee stepped closer to me, ready for whatever was about to happen. Security was already moving in our direction, but Riley held up a hand. He wanted to see this play out. "Understand what?" I kept my voice calm. "That you made a mistake. That we belong together. I forgive you for everything. The arrest, the lawyers, all of it. We can start over." The delusion was unbelievable. She actually thought this was romantic. "Brianna, we're done. We've been done for over a year. No, you're just being stubborn. And this?" She glared at Lee with pure hatred. "This is your pathetic rebound, your downgrade. She's not even that pretty." That's when Riley stepped forward with the biggest grin I've ever seen. "Oh, this is perfect. Brianna, meet Lee. She's a veterinarian who owns her own practice, drives her own car, and has never once committed identity theft." Crazy standards, right? The crowd was eating this up. Someone started live streaming on Instagram. Brianna's face went red. "Screw you, you don't know what you're talking about. She's a witch who stole my man." "Your man?" Riley laughed. "Lady, you told him to deal with you staying at your ex's place. That's not how you keep a man." That's how you get screwed. Right on cue, two security guards appeared. Ma'am, you need to leave immediately. No, I'm not done. Jackson, please, you have to listen to me. I love you. She tried to grab my arm. I stepped back. Security moved in. This is harassment. This is illegal. I'll sue everyone here. With what lawyer? Riley called out as they started escorting her toward the exit. Didn't Daddy already spend his retirement money bailing you out of jail? The crowd was loving it. Even the bride and groom were watching from the head table, trying not to laugh. As they dragged her toward the door, she made one last desperate play. Jackson, remember what we had. Remember how good it was before you ruined everything. Riley cupped his hands around his mouth. Yeah, the best part is when he ruined everything. The entire reception erupted. People were recording, laughing, applauding. Someone started chanting, "Deal with it, deal with it." Her final scream as security pushed her out the door. "I hate all of you. Lee's ugly and Jackson's a loser," Riley's parting shot. If that were true, you wouldn't be here begging for him back, sweetie. The whole thing was on social media within minutes. Just Deal With It started trending locally with the caption, "When keeping it real goes wrong." By Monday morning, it had gone viral with over 200,000 views. Chris the groom found me later that night. "Dude, I'm sorry about the drama. I had no idea she'd show up. Not your fault, man. Thanks for having security handle it." Are you kidding? That was the best entertainment we could have asked for. My wedding's going to be remembered forever now. I got a call from Nora Tuesday morning. "Your ex violated her restraining order at a public event with about 50 witnesses and video evidence. The DA wants to revoke her probation and send her to jail. She's also facing additional charges for the harassment of your girlfriend. Interested in pressing charges? Absolutely. Last I heard, she's doing 18 months in county lockup. She wanted me to deal with it. I did, on my terms. The lesson is simple. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Peace out, Reddit. Story 5. Hey, 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 time for another out-of-this-world story from our space. Sometimes the only happy ending is the one with divorce papers. Today on our space, when a midlife crisis involves more than just a sports car. Up first, instead of love letters, ops getting served papers. I 30 female cheated on my husband, 27 male. He's taking it well, but I feel he resents me. I know I did something awful and disgusting, and when I couldn't take the guilt anymore, I cut off my affair partner and confessed everything to my husband. He got more upset and depressed than angry, and I begged for him to not divorce me. I proposed counseling, therapy, even allowing him to have sex with other women, but he wasn't interested. He said he wanted to try to work us out, and I jumped in being the best wife a man can ask for. I cook his favorite dishes, leave him loving notes, and bought new lingerie to entice him. His reactions are lukewarm at best. He smiles and thanks me, but not once he has said he loves me since I have confessed. He barely initiates anything, and I basically have to push myself on him, not that he complains. Sometimes we talk about this, but I think I still lost the man I love. His behavior with me feels very artificial and nothing changes his facade. I can be playful, I can be sad, I can get angry, and I can get seductive. His reaction is always the stupid smile and polite words. He was so emotional and sincere before all of this happened. I want him to let out his true emotions with me, even if he hates me. I still love him so much. What can I do to fix this? Let's check with the community for some relevant comments. Is this a troll post? If not, please share some details. How long have you been together? And how long was the affair? Who was the other man, co-worker? The op replies, "We have been married for 5 years. My affair lasted a couple of months, and it was with a client." Someone else asks, "Okay, thank you. What do you mean by cutting off the affair? Is this person still a client? Do you have to have business contact with him? Are you seeing a therapist? Do you know why you strayed?" The op replies again, "I ended my relationship with the client and passed his contract to a co-worker. No contact ever since. I have been doing individual therapy. I don't know why I did all this. My body felt like it was on autopilot." Well, 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 looks like you're knee-deep in the aftermath of your little oopsie-daisy affair. Your husband's not exactly jumping for joy at the idea of you playing footsie with someone else, I take it. And all of your attempts to sprinkle a little love and affection back into your marriage are falling flatter than a pancake on a skillet. But hey, at least you're trying, right? Cooking his favorite dishes, leaving love notes and sporting lingerie that could make a saint blush. That's some grade effort, even if it's about as effective as using a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Hey, if you're looking for a solution, here's a wild idea. How about actually talking to him? I know, it's a revolutionary concept. But maybe, just maybe, if you both put down the facade and had a real heart-to-heart, you might actually get somewhere. Or hey, you could always try a seance. Maybe you can summon the ghost of your old marriage back from the dead. Stranger things have happened, right? Update. He knows I cheated. We didn't separate and I begged him not to divorce and let me fix this. He agreed, but his behavior since my confession has basically been one of indifference. Like I wrote on my last post, I do my best to be the best wife he could ask for. I cook his favorite foods, get him gifts, screw his brains out every night. He just smiles and thanks me. He acts kind and never yells at me, but I feel his icy indifference under that mask of courtesy. 2 weeks ago he started coming home late, very late, and when he does, he just goes to bed. I asked him what's going on and he told me in the kindest way possible that it's not my business. I call him when he stays out and he picked up only once. I heard a woman laughing in the background. I'm starting to think he is cheating back on me. It effing hurts. If he told me at least, I would do my best to stomach it. I deserve this after all, but he won't tell me. He just shuts me out. A common friend told me she spotted him in a car with a woman she didn't recognize, and this felt like a stab in the heart. She said she couldn't describe her exactly because she wore big sunglasses, but she recognized my husband because of his particular taste in neckties. They were talking, but my friend said that from their position it looked like they were holding their hands or one of them was touching the other's lap. I don't know what to do. If he is having an affair, I deserve it, but I need to know. The uncertainty is killing me. Should I confront him? Should I try to find out more? Update. He left me. I did like you guys said and begged him to talk to me. He didn't want to, but I cried and yelled so much I puked all over. He got softer with me. He helped me clean up and we talked. I asked him if he was cheating on me, and he said he was talking with someone but didn't do anything with her. I asked if she was the woman my friend saw him with. He thought on it a little but said no. It was another woman with whom he met a month ago in his office. I asked him how could he and said I gave him permission, and he didn't do anything besides unloading his problems and our situation with her. But he played it like he was having a full affair so I could feel what it felt like, especially because according to him, I neglected him and made it obvious I was cheating on him. He said he was suffering and I was almost rubbing it in his face. I told him I wasn't doing it on purpose, and he said this was even worse because I didn't care at all. He said that everything I did after confessing meant nothing and just made him think I am selfish, self-centered, and lack any sort of self-respect. I asked him if we could work on myself and our marriage, but he said we can have counseling to sort ourselves out, but the marriage is over. He said he wishes no ill on me and decided to cut his charade because he could no longer bear to see the woman he once loved suffer like that, but he said I am no longer that woman. I started sobbing again and he held me, but he kept saying no when I asked him if we could work this out. I asked him what he was going to do and he's moving out. He already found a new place. I asked him if he was going to live with that woman and he said he wasn't, but she was close enough. I asked him how he could pick a total stranger he met a month ago over his wife of 5 years. He said his wife of 5 years no longer exists. He has to pick between two strangers, and that woman made a much better impression on him. I told him he was a fool, and he could not know this woman will probably use and dump him. He got harsh and said she's better than me for sure. He said he won't say to our families our marriage ended because I cheated, but because we grew apart, and that we will leave the house to me as long as I make the divorce smooth. But if I try to take him to the cleaners, drag it out, or cause any problems, he will tell everyone what I did and destroy me and my reputation. This happened yesterday, and he has already packed up almost everything. I can't stop crying and I can't believe this is happening. This is horrible and unfair. There was one more relevant comment from the op. You guys are right saying that I suck, but he has fault too. He never really wanted to fix this. He used me for months and then discarded me, and yet I want him back and forgive and forget all the hurt we've done to each other. As for his girl, I don't think she will be good for him. All right, let's dive a little deeper into this abyss of dysfunction, shall we? You thought confessing would somehow magically fix everything, but instead, it's like you opened Pandora's box and unleashed a tsunami of chaos upon your life. Bravo, but hey, at least you two have something in common now. You're both drowning in your own self-inflicted misery. Talk about relationship goals, am I right? So here's the deal. You can keep wallowing in your self-pity, or you can grab a metaphorical shovel and start digging your way out of this mess. But hey, no pressure, misery loves company after all. I mean, you sort of asked for him to leave you the moment you decided to cheat on him. I'm sure any woman that doesn't cheat on him is already a step above you, op. New update, got served divorce papers today. It feels like a nightmare. I keep telling myself it's not real and I'm going to wake up. My husband moved out 2 weeks ago, ostensibly to live with another woman, but I kept eye and ears on him, and some friends tell me his goings-on and seemingly there was no other woman at all. I hoped he was just collecting his thoughts and that he would come back to me. But today he did it. He had me served. I don't want to believe he is done with us. I love him so much, and I miss him every day. It's hard to believe anybody can truly love someone if they choose to hurt them by cheating on them. What do you think? Next up, from family man to family scandal. My husband of 20 years is cheating on me with our son's 18-year-old girlfriend. I'm going to use pseudonyms for anyone I reference in this post. I 41 female, am a stay-at-home mom. My husband, 48 male, whom we'll call Paul, works in finance. We have been married for nearly 20 years. We have 2 kids whom we'll call Eric, our 18-year-old son, currently a senior in high school, and Mary, our 15-year-old daughter. They're both the lights of my life. My marriage with my husband has grown somewhat stale over the years for a myriad of reasons, such as his work schedule and how I've aged poorly since we first met. Our son, Eric, has a girlfriend, 18 female, whom he's been dating since they were freshmen in high school. We'll call her Amy. Eric absolutely adores Amy. She's his first love, and she's someone I've always considered as family. This makes the whole situation emotionally excruciating for me. Last week, I inadvertently saw my husband's phone screen and got a glimpse of a text thread between my husband and Amy, our son's girlfriend, and I read what looked like a message of her telling him that she misses sucking his cock. I froze in place, in complete disbelief. I spent most of the day convincing myself that I must have misread what I saw. However, I didn't misread it because, over the last several days, I discovered a file on his computer filled with tons of BDSM porn. He clearly has a porn addiction. He also has saved photos of Amy from her Instagram on his computer. Although they weren't inappropriate, she was fully clothed. It was still the proof I needed to confirm that I wasn't going crazy. I also looked at his phone during opportune moments and saw more of their interactions. I wish I had never looked. They were filled with mean, horrible things said at my expense, with him constantly comparing me to her. He would call me fat and old, among other things, with Amy LOLing. I've always had hunches or paranoid feelings that Paul has been cheating on me, but never in a million years could I have fathomed something like this. Last month I found a thong in our bedroom that I know wasn't mine. I turned a blind eye to it, being naive and acting like it was maybe our daughter's, even though that made zero sense. Not only is he cheating on me, but he's betraying our son. I'm completely devastated. I don't even think words can adequately describe the dread, anger, shock I feel right now. I'm totally overwhelmed on how to handle this because obviously action needs to be taken, but I'm terrified of what kind of psychic blow this will be for my son. I have no idea how to even broach this completely effed up topic with him. I wouldn't wish this predicament on my worst enemy. I can't even believe I married this scumbag in the first place. And then my mind started to race, realizing that I started noticing specifically unusual behavior from him around the same time Amy turned 18. Was he waiting for her to turn 18 before pursuing this affair? There's so many layers to all of this, and I'm completely paralyzed with fear and dread about it all. None of it makes any effing sense. How did this happen? Am I that much of a stupid idiot that I let all of this happen under my watch? Eric adores Amy, and the thought of revealing this sickening truth to him terrifies me. The impact of his young heart and mind could be devastating. My heart aches for Eric and Mary, who are completely innocent bystanders. I haven't confronted my husband about this because I'm frankly scared of the domino effect. I don't know who to turn to about this first. I share my story not for sympathy, but in search of understanding and perhaps advice for those who might have had to grapple with deep betrayal. Thank you for listening. And here's some further info from the op. To not have my initial post be long-winded because I don't think I needed to get into the minutiae of this, I didn't bother going into those details. How I inadvertently saw it was this. He was on his phone. He did not have iMessage open currently on his screen, but the application was still open. You know how on the iPhone when you swipe up and it still shows all of the applications that are open and you can close them. When he was closing out the applications, something he does compulsively, I noticed it. It's not like he was some kind of idiotic buffoon having iMessage open for all to see. I saw he forgot he had the application running when he swiped up from a completely different app. Also, I did say in my post that I went back to his phone to actually solidify my suspicion on a different day. So you are incorrect in asserting that I am now magically changing my story. I am being consistent. Now let's get some relevant comments from the community. First up, if she's freshly 18, isn't this illegal? There's no way they weren't doing anything illegal before she turned into an adult. Also, even if so, the age gap is over 3 decades. Your husband is suspect as F police immediately. DOP replies, she's been 18 for 5 months now. I haven't been able to gauge when their affair started. I'm trying my hardest to figure that out. He deletes his texts every couple of weeks, it seems like. So I haven't been able to pinpoint when this whole thing started. DOP adds this in the comments as well. Thank you for everyone for overwhelming support. I'm sorry if I haven't responded to your private messages. I'll get to it when I can. Dealing with a lot right now and taking a lot of steps that need to be taken. I'm trying to be smart and strategic with this situation I'm in. I want to be clear that her not telling my son about this was never something I was considering. I didn't mean to make it seem that way. I was just saying I'm intensely dreading it, but obviously it needs to be addressed. It's one part of the many steps of my overall plan. I'm currently playing dumb and collecting as much evidence as I can so I can be prepared for anything and everything. I'm going to protect myself, and I'm going to make sure I don't put myself in any potential harm's way. I'll post a more thorough update soon when I can. But please know you've all touched my heart so much and made me feel less alone. Oh boy, talk about a midlife crisis on steroids. Not only is he robbing the cradle, but he's also indulging in some 50 Shades of Grey fantasy with your son's girlfriend. I mean, his choice in entertainment is one thing, but like also of all the people in the world, he's got to cheat on you with his son's girlfriend. Really? Update. I'm divorcing my husband because he cheated on me with our son's 18-year-old girlfriend. March 22nd, 2024. I'm using pseudonyms for confidentiality. I shared a situation a few days ago on another subreddit involving my 41 female husband, Paul, 48 male, and our children, Eric, 18 male, and Mary, 15 female. I discovered that Paul was having an affair with our son's 18-year-old girlfriend, Amy. My son has been dating her since they were freshmen in high school. My brother connected me to a very tough junkyard dog-type lawyer. I saved screenshots of all his conversations with Amy. I was only able to get the last 3 months from iCloud. The conversations were mostly flirty and dirty talk. It was hard to stomach, completely sleazy, and I saw several negative things said about me. His call history showed the talks with her for hours pretty consistently. He uses dating apps. I took screenshots of his profiles and all of the active chats he has with his matches. It's very clear he uses a filter to seek out girls who are 18 to 22 or so. I copied all of his files from the computer. He goes on sex chat rooms and forums, and he spends a ton of money on OnlyFans. I rummaged through every possible hiding spot I could think of in the house. He has various toys, blindfolds, cuffs, lubricants, etc. He also had different outfits which looked kind of like a girl's Catholic school uniform and a French-made type outfit too. I picked up Eric and Mary from school, and we all drove to my brother's. They were able to sense something was awry when I picked them up. I delicately told them the entire situation, and I broke down crying. Mary had the most anger, even more than Eric. I met with Amy's mother and told her everything. She confiscated Amy's phone and gave me the entire chat log. It only dated back 3 months ago, like on my husband's iCloud, almost as if they both deleted the messages at the same time. She told me Amy sobbed when confronted. Amy basically told her mother that she will never understand and that she and him are in love. I don't want to get into too many details with what else she was saying, but suffice to say, it's very easy to assume that my husband slowly and methodically became a sage-like figure in her life, making her feel like she could rely on him, and he took advantage of the fact that she came from a broken home. Amy is also non-stop insistent that their friendship only became romantic physical recently, and before that she said he was more of a friend and mentor. I confronted Paul over Zoom. The look on his face was scary. He became red and looked so sweaty. He had anger and panic in his eyes. His tone of voice was very defensive and frightening. He kept yelling the word context over and over again, and none of that happened. He was unable to speak without constant stutters and intensity. Nothing really made any sense to me. I refused to tell him where I was, and he said I had no right to take his kids away from him, and then he abruptly left the Zoom. My lawyer is filing for temporary sole custody of Mary and a restraining order. Mary is still the most angry. She's totally furious with her dad and Amy. Justifiably so, of course. Mary is recollecting moments in time she watched her dad interact with her friends, and she's in knots about it. Eric is very clearly hurting, but he's so strong and very level-headed. He wants to see a therapist. The maturity my kids are showing makes me proud. They don't deserve this at all. We made the authorities aware of everything. I plan on being completely unforgiving and ruthless in this divorce. I'm reflecting on how I've been treated and how it's made me a shell of myself, and how I've had a very negative opinion of myself because of him over the last 20 years. I don't want to let this scumbag get away with it. I want to reinvent myself and move on stronger than ever. Now let's check in for some relevant comments. First up, how is your son holding up? What has developed between him and Amy? The op replies, he hasn't spoken to Amy yet since finding out the news, and I'm not sure if he ever will again. Another user chimes in, have you confirmed if the thong you found was Amy's? The situation is effed up. The op replies, I confirmed that it wasn't my daughter's, she said it wasn't hers, and I know it wasn't mine, so who else could it be? Another user asks, wait, are you saying that they effed in the master bedroom? Don't cheaters always use their married bed? The op replies, yes, I believe he did. The op also adds this in the comments, both me and my son are going to get tested and checked out as well. There's no telling how many different women he's been sleeping around with. As for Amy, her mom has been in contact with me, and Amy has been threatening to run away with him because they are in love. I'm not sure if that's the maturity your kids are showing or just some serious dissociation. Update 2, March 27th, 2024. Thank you again for all the love and encouragement. It gives me comfort and means so much to me. I've received many comments and messages accusing me of faking this story, which oddly also provides comfort because all of this feels unreal even to me. It validates my own feelings that there are people out there who can't even fathom this being true. I wish it were fake. I've been focusing on and worrying about how others are feeling over this, somewhat ignoring my own feelings, which I'm trying to change. I range from anger to numbness, like a light switch. We're all safe and still at my brother's house. We're very careful and his house is secured. Paul has tried to call my cell phone several times a day. I'm refusing to interact with him, and I will have my lawyer handle all correspondence. He scares me, frankly. My brother has a very secure house with an alarm system and deadbolt locks. We feel safe with him. Both my son and I got checked out and tested. It appears so far that we're both clean based on the immediate rapid tests, but in the coming days we'll know for certain when the lab's results come in. I'm not overly concerned. Eric is scheduled to see a therapist early next week, which is very good and needed. He's not himself right now. He seems a bit shell-shocked, and I am concerned. He internalizes a lot, and it's hard to get a read on what's going on in his head. That being said, he's thoughtful and has been talking with me, asking me how I'm doing and everything. He's not interested in corresponding with his dad at all. He calls only my cell phone, and he hasn't tried to reach out to either Eric or Mary. I get the sense that Paul is extremely nervous. He's scared. And I think he deep down knows that if investigated thoroughly, he would be in big trouble. That's what my gut is telling me. I still think about the Zoom call with him, and the more I think about it, the more it looked like he was a man whose entire world was crashing down on him. The panic in his face was very apparent. I offered Mary for me to make an appointment with the therapist as well, but she doesn't want to see one yet. She said she's open to it eventually, but wants time to herself. She's been asking her friends about her dad and if they experienced any creepiness from him. Her friends were open and honest with her, and apparently they felt like he stared a lot and sensed his hovering presence whenever they were over. One of Mary's friends went so far as to say that she felt like he was checking her out a lot, like looking at her rear and complimenting the color of her yoga pants. At the time, no issue was brought up about it, but in light of everything that has been happening, it seems strange now. He would sit himself in different areas or vantage points to get a good view of her, she claimed. He also asked questions about what kind of friend group or which clique they were in at school. He kept asking if they were popular girls. I'm completely embarrassed that they had this experience at our house. As for updates on Amy, which is the main reason why I wanted to write this update, I completely agree that she is also a victim. A lot of people have been emphasizing that, and I agree. I've done everything I could in my own power to indirectly get her opportunities to get help. Like I said, I told her mother and she's been updating me on everything. Amy, unfortunately, is still living in her deluded reality, and I can only pray that she'll eventually come to her senses. She doesn't want to see any doctors or therapists at all, and has been constantly trying to reach Paul because, again, she believes that they are in love. From what I've been told, she hasn't been able to get a hold of him, and he's been avoiding communication with her completely. Amy blames me for that and believes I took away his devices and am very controlling. Any truth that her mother tries to convey to her is met with conspiracy theories and hostility. Amy looks at me as a villain and still sees Paul through rose-colored glasses. Her mother showed her screenshots of his dating app profiles and matches, and she refuses to believe it, saying, "I photoshopped it." According to her mom, Amy keeps saying things like everyone is just mad because she found herself a real man and that I'm jealous because she takes better care of him than I do. It's in line with some of the conversations I screenshotted, where a lot of what Paul says is him complaining about things I don't do for him sexually. Right now, she's insistent that she and Paul will be together in the long run. He's honestly a slimeball. I can only hope that Amy comes to her senses, but me directly intervening doesn't feel like it would be productive at the moment. Maybe eventually, though. Now a couple relevant comments from the community. The first user says, "I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Reading all the previous posts, I honestly get the vibe that your husband wasn't a very good one to begin with. Someday, when you're ready, you're going to find someone who thinks you're glorious as you age. Your son is also going to be okay. He's gotten a lesson on exactly how men shouldn't behave. A painful one, but in time, he's going to realize that Amy was groomed and abused. It sounds like she was vulnerable, and your ex took advantage of a child who was in a bad situation. Hopefully, once Amy has had some time to process just how messed up this was, she'll tell the police the whole story. I fully believe something is happening before she turned 18. The op replies, I believe stuff happened before she was 18 too. Someone in the community also chimes in, do you think that they kept the relationship secret for most of Eric and Amy's relationship? What a disgusting father and a pig if that is the truth. To which the op replies, I'm not sure when things got actually physical or romantic, but I do think his grooming started as soon as she came into the picture when Eric started dating her freshman year. This mentor and a friend that Amy alluded to had a start right away, and the way she's acting now, being so indebted and believing every single thing he says, shows that his effect on her had to be over a long period of time. She only turned 18 like 5 months ago. Her behavior and infatuation with him seemed so strong that it couldn't possibly be for only 5 months of them being together. One more quick community thought. If they are consenting adults, then there is nothing to report. This is a personal problem that needs to be dealt with by attorneys and the people involved. People are way too jumpy to snap to the police to fix their problems anymore. Op is handling this the correct way. If any legal issues come into play, then her attorney will do the right thing. The op replies to that. The only thing we can really hang our hat on is the possibility of Amy having an epiphany of the reality of her situation, and she opens up candidly about when it began. But because she's 18 currently and has no interest in saying or doing anything that could potentially put Paul in legal trouble, nothing really can be done. Unless they find out about other girls that I have no idea about yet. Well, your life certainly took a detour into the Twilight Zone, didn't it? What the heck is actually happening? Seriously, the man's got more red flags than a communist parade. He's like the poster child for what not to do in a marriage, a walking, talking, cautionary tale and tailored suit. Then there's his interest in your daughter's friends, who sits around checking out teenagers like they're picking out fruit at the grocery store, and asking about their popularity status. That's some serious creeper behavior right there. It's like he's trying to relive his high school glory days through their Instagram photos. And Amy, poor girl's gone from high school romance to a full-blown episode of Survivor Creep Edition. As for your son, well, he's getting a crash course in the world of messed-up relationships. Forget sex ed, he's learning Betrayal 101 in real time. But hey, at least he's got you in his corner, armed with a hefty dose of motherly love and a solid plan to navigate through this dumpster fire of a situation. New update: the support, again, has been overwhelming, and I'm very grateful. Sadly, I've received a lot of negative, accusatory, harassing private messages from people here who think I'm faking this story. Someone made a comment on some post somewhere claiming that my story has been debunked, and people believed that person. I've seen an uptick in negative messages accusing me of making this up for money. I'm not asking for money at all. Coming here was completely rooted in emotional desperation, and I didn't expect anyone to get invested in my story this way. But again, I'm not looking for anything out of this. I have no reason to lie. I'm not gaining anything from this. If you don't believe me, that's fine. I don't care, but the only thing I ask is to not cross the line and start sending me private messages that are mean-spirited or accusatory. The only reason I'm continuing this post is because of those of you who have sent some love here, and the support really lifted my spirits. As for the divorce, it's very much underway. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it all because it's ongoing, and I want to make sure everything isn't going to go smoothly. I got temporary custody of Mary. Paul also has to pay temporary child support. There's a protective order. Paul can't contact us or come near us. Right now, we're just focusing on getting through this legal mess. Again, not getting into specifics because I don't want to mess anything up. But what I'll say is, I'm very confident, divorce aside, that there's overwhelming evidence against Paul that will get him in serious trouble, and it will impact him for the rest of his life. I'm sure eventually I can share more about that. I know a lot of people are concerned about his predatory ways, and I just want to convey this. Even though I have to be vague right now, justice will come. All of your concern about how my kids are doing psychologically means a lot to me. Eric has been to therapy twice over the last 2 weeks. I know some people thought I was dismissive of him and acting like he's doing okay. I very much know that he's hurting internally, and we're doing everything we can to make sure he knows he is supported and loved. My brother has been amazing in spending time with Eric and Mary, and both of them have confided in him about a lot. My brother has a very healthy marriage, and both he and his wife have really stepped up to the plate for all of us. Mary has not seen a therapist yet, but she promises that she will be open to seeing one soon. Her anger has mostly turned into sadness, I noticed, and I hope I can get her to see a therapist soon. Her friends have played a key role in this whole thing, and that's something that Mary has been grappling with as well. I know a lot of people are invested in the well-being of Amy as well. There were a lot of questions about whether Eric and Amy would still see each other at school. It sounded like they go to the same school, but they do not. Eric and Amy went to the same junior high school and knew each other even there, but Amy ended up going to an all-girls Catholic high school while Eric, and Mary too, stayed in the public school system. We all lived in the same town, and over the summer heading into freshman year is when they were getting to know each other and when they started dating. I wish I had a better Amy update, but it's gotten a lot worse since the last update. Paul has actually been seeing Amy, despite her mother trying to force her to not see him. She tells me that Amy says she's 18 and an adult, and she can do what she wants. Her mother is in a precarious spot because if she kicks Amy out of the house for defying her, something that she has threatened to do, which I think is a mistake, she would just run to Paul permanently. The time she spends with Paul has increased over the last week, despite the fact that Paul initially ghosted her when all of this first hit the fan. There were some days when Amy would just be gone for hours on end. There's only so much I can do with the Amy situation, but again, I do believe things will turn around soon with that. Given what I know about Paul and what's to come, I can only pray that Amy can get help and guidance when more crap hits the fan. I'm doing everything I can with my own kids and my own mental health, and Amy's mom knows she has my support, and that's all I can really provide. Now for a couple comments from the community. First up. To be honest, the only way that Amy will see how messed up Paul is when he eventually sleeps with someone else or he accuses her of seducing him. Even if he ends as a sex offender, I don't know if that's enough to convince her that he's a creep and dangerous. Now I'm curious to what Paul's intentions are. He ghosted her, and now all of a sudden they're meeting up again. Worst case scenario, he's going to have her falsely testify, which I don't think will take much convincing Amy. Honestly, you and Amy's mom did what you could. The best thing Amy's mom can do is sit and wait, but don't kick her out. Let her know she'll be there for Amy and she'll still have a roof over her head. And pray she snaps out of it soon, instead of years later when she has burned bridges and wasted her life on a man who took advantage and ruined everyone else's lives. Someone else from the community chimes in. Take care of yourself and please don't stress about these internet trolls. They are mean, heartless, soulless humans who have nothing better to do in life than tear people down that are already hurting. Though I'm also a stranger, your story moved me and I'm so sad that you have to go through this. Please take care of yourself too. Sounds like both kids are doing okay now, but you need to be well too. Best. Ah, Paul, the gift that keeps on giving. Unwanted gifts, that is. It's like he's playing a twisted game of how to be the creepiest ex-husband ever. Paul's got an actor manipulating the situation to his advantage, like a puppeteer pulling the strings of a marionette. And Amy, well, she's like a moth to Paul's flame, only this flame is more dumpster fire than candlelight dinner. And poor Eric. He didn't just lose his girlfriend, but he lost his father. It can't be easy for both Eric and Mary learning of all this about a man who's supposed to protect and care for them. It's a bitter pill to swallow, realizing that the person they once trusted implicitly is capable of such callous disregard for their feelings and well-being. This definitely isn't how you want to learn who your father truly is. I mean, it's one thing to learn that your dad's a cheater, and it's something completely else when your father's a creep. Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today on our space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon. Story 6. Hey, 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 time for an out-of-this-world story from our space. Have you ever felt like the third wheel? Today on our space, it's time these ops turn off the infidelity highway and take the scenic route. Up first, there's nothing like a Saturday morning surprise. Let's open up the relationship. The breakfast of champions in relationship land. Girlfriend asked for an open relationship. Is there any chance at saving this? Hello all. Hope you all are having a great start to your weekend. Can't say mine has been great. I apologize if this sub isn't the right place for a question like this, but I feel like it is. Let's just get into it. This morning, my girlfriend, who we will call Rose, 24 female, told me she needed to talk to me about something very important. Turns out this important thing was to ask if we could open up the relationship. This felt like a huge gut punch. I really thought we had a good relationship. I'm a 25 male, and we've been together for 2.5 years. I was pretty stunned, and I think she could tell because she seemed to backtrack very quickly. I asked her why she'd want to open up the relationship, and she said she thinks it would help us both grow. What does that mean? Anyway, I won't go over the whole conversation. I tried to stay calm as much as I could. Eventually told her I'd like her to leave while I thought about everything. She seems pretty distraught, which makes me wonder if she thought I'd react differently. Anyway, my main question is there any chance at saving this? Really, up until this point I thought things were going good. Maybe I'm still kind of in shock, but I'd like to possibly save the relationship. This literally happened like an hour ago, and I'm really having a difficult time processing, but I feel really hurt. And I've always heard that when one partner requests to open the relationship, that it's basically over. Any advice is appreciated. Has anyone ever gotten through a situation like this? Or does it always end in crap? Thanks, y'all. Edit. Okay, y'all have convinced me. I was already leaning towards ending everything, but considering I haven't gotten a single person telling me this would work, or that she probably isn't already cheating, I think it's time to end it. I'm gonna call her right now and have her come get her stuff. Luckily, we don't share an apartment, so not too much stuff will need to be moved. Thanks for all the advice, everyone. I genuinely appreciate it. Edit 2. She's very upset, y'all, yelling at me about how I can end the relationship over a question. I should have just packed her stuff and had her come get it. Should not have called. Let's see what the community thinks of this. First up, she's either cheating or has someone in mind. She wants to keep you as plan B. Don't open the relationship. It never works out, and you'll just get even more hurt than if you just break up with her. Someone is putting the open relationship in her head. Someone else chimes in. Open relationship request means 1. She has cheated and feels guilty and wants to wipe that away. 2. She wants to get her back blown out by Jimmy Thunderbang while utilizing you for your resources and support. Cake eater. Or 3. She's actively interviewing a replacement, monkey branching. At any rate, she already has cheated or knows who she wants to bang. Maybe she even has a list. It's over. End it. Someone else says, don't ask any questions, just say this. Rose, I thought about it. Since you want to act single, I'm making you single. As of now, we are both single, so you can F the person you have in mind. But I will not be waiting for you. I deserve better than that. Then walk away. Then after you leave, mark single on all your socials with a caption. It sucks when someone wants to use the guise of opening the relationship as a way to cheat on you with a clear conscience. Ah, weekends, the perfect time for relationship bombshells. It's like brunch, but with a side of emotional turmoil. So Rose drops the "let's open the relationship" grenade, huh? Classic move. It's like saying, hey, I know we've been sharing this ice cream cone for a while, but I really want to see if there's a better flavor out there. And then the backtracking begins. It's like watching someone try to defuse a bomb they just threw. Oh no, wait, I didn't mean it. Let's just pretend that didn't happen, shall we? But seriously, suggesting an open relationship as a growth strategy. That's like trying to fix a broken leg with a band-aid. I mean, sure, it may distract you from the pain for a moment, but it's not really addressing the issue. Update. Well, today has sucked backsides. When Rose came over to pick up her stuff, well, didn't quite go like that. She was quite adamant that we were not breaking up, especially over a hypothetical situation. Well, I'm not exactly proud of this, but it sort of blew up at her. We had a relationship where I never really yelled. So I think it might have scared her honestly. And again, I'm not exactly proud of it, but I really wanted to get some answers. After reading all the comments, y'all had me convinced she was cheating. Eventually, she completely broke down, and guess what? Some of y'all were right. She had already slept with someone. Hypothetical my butt, Rose. I really thought I felt broken earlier. It turns out I didn't even know the definition. I felt an insane mix of emotions, most rage and sadness, a great combination. Honestly, there was a moment where I thought I was going to put a hole in the wall. I'm proud of myself for not doing that. I calmly told her to get any of her crap and leave. She was in hysterics at this point. She kept telling me we could get through it and not to throw our relationship away. I simply told her that she did that. I just sat on the couch, numb, waiting for her to grab her crap. Eventually, she left. Some of you probably could have predicted this, but she ended up leaving when she got here. So inevitably, I'll have to deal with that. Sorry, I stopped responding to y'all. I've been sitting on the couch just thinking of everything. My phone is blowing up with messages from Rose, her best friend, and her sister. I don't even know how to tell my friends and family. I think I'm just going to pack the rest of her crap and have one of my friends take it to her. Don't really want to see her again. I feel nauseous. Thanks for the advice. I'm glad I listened to you guys and didn't get tricked into something stupid. I didn't mention this in the first post, but this was my first real relationship, so I was hesitant at first to let it go. Having a hard time processing how different my life was literally 13 hours ago. Appreciate everyone who left a comment and reached out. The community has some more words of wisdom. First up, dude. Advice from a 44-year-old man who has dealt with cheaters twice. Tell everyone what happened today. Give every detail you know. Do it fast. If you don't, she'll try to blame you and stab you in the back, make you out to be the bad guy. Sorry you're a group now. All the best. Someone else chimes in. I'm sorry you're going through this, man, but you dodged a bullet here. You don't have any kids or assets and you're not married, so you can just block her and erase her from your life. It won't be easy and take time. You need to heal, but eventually you will heal. She asked for an open relationship because she felt guilty about cheating and wanted to keep doing it without guilt. There's no excuse for cheating. Her friends and sister will try and tell you she made a mistake and to not throw away your relationship over one mistake. But she made a choice to cheat and lie, then suggested an open relationship to ease her guilt, then will gaslight the crap out of you. Block all of them. So Rose's adamant denial of her breakup, huh? And surprise, surprise. Turns out it wasn't just a hypothetical situation after all. I guess Rose missed the memo that cheating isn't a part of a healthy relationship diet. And the explosive confrontation, nothing like a good old yelling match to spice up the breakup proceedings. But hey, props to you for not redecorating the walls with new ventilation holes. Keeping it classy in the midst of chaos. And now you're stuck with a pile of Rose's stuff like a souvenir from a disastrous vacation. Not to mention the joys of modern communication. Your phone blowing up like a fireworks display courtesy of Rose and her entourage. I guess she's going for the if you can't win them over, drown them in messages approach. Update. Additional update. Hello, y'all. Since my last post got so much attention, I thought some of you lovely gentlewomen and dudes would like to know how the last 2 days have gone. Well, my phone was blowing up with texts from Rose, her sister, and her best friend. Didn't respond to Rose a single time. However, I stupidly respond to the others for a little bit. You all probably know what was said. Throwing away the relationship over something minor, yada, yada. I did have to laugh at the BFF telling me I'm a witch for not fighting for my relationship. And clearly I didn't care about her if I left it that easy. So, I dicum mutomboed their butts. Took Sunday to try and not fall into a horrible pit of despair and self-loathing by watching some ball and playing some Zelda. You guys would be proud of me. I haven't had a single drop of alcohol since crap went down. Today was the day I worked on some crap, packed up her stuff, had a buddy drop it off at her place. He sent me a photo of it that he just left it on the top of her car. I thought that was pretty funny. Some of y'all were worried about me reaching out to people. The people that I'm actually concerned with knowing are aware of everything. Finally got the balls to call my mom, was filled with shame and had a hard time calling her. I even sent a text to Rose's parents informing them of my side of what happened, just in case she spread some fibs. Some straight-up lies, fabrications, y'all get the idea. Then Ruddy goberted their butts too. I did want to touch on one thing. Some of y'all were convinced in my first post that my friend who didn't like Rose was the one she was having hypothetical situations with. I would be genuinely shocked. More shocked than finding out Rose was a cheater. He lives about 5 hours away and only met her once. He's also engaged, which doesn't necessarily mean he couldn't cheat, I guess, but I would be very, very surprised. The support y'all have given me has been overwhelming, but I appreciate every comment and message. I think I'm a long way from feeling good again, but you guys have helped me believe that it's something I can feel again someday. Honestly, would be surprised if I update again, but I thought I'd give a little bit of closure to anyone who was interested. Thanks, y'all. Taking a day to avoid the abyss of despair by indulging in some ball in Zelda. Now that's what I call self-care. And kudos on the sobriety streak op. Operation Pack and Ditch. Dropping off for stuff like a surprise Amazon delivery, except with a more emotional baggage. And props to your buddy for the rooftop drop-off. Classic move. But wait, a text for Rose's parents just in case she's spreading more lies than Pinocchio after Tequila Bender. Talk about covering your bases like a pro. Here's your closure op. May your future be brighter than a master sword in the temple of time. And if you ever need a shoulder to cry on, just remember, Zelda never judges. Cheers, and may the Triforce be with you. Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments below. Next up in the game of life, some people choose to play chess. Others prefer a scandalous game of Twister in their marital bed. My stepdaughter died 4 weeks ago, and I caught my husband and his ex-wife in our bed. My stepdaughter, Becca, 14 female, died 4 weeks ago. I've been in her life since she was 7 years old, and we were extremely close. My husband, Derek, 40 male, his ex-wife, Sam, 38 female, and I, 35 female, get along very well. There's never been an issue in the 7 years that I've been with Derek. Sam has always been kind to me. She didn't even care that Becca called me mom too. Right after Becca's passing, Sam had so much anxiety and depression that she was unable to be by herself. She has no family besides us, so we invited her to stay with us. Sam hardly leaves the house, mostly just sleeps in Becca's room, which is completely understandable. I always tell her that I'm here if she needs me, and that I want her to take her time with grieving, and that there's no pressure to go back to her home. Today, I needed to run some errands, so I asked Sam if she'd like to join me to get out of the house a little bit, but she declined and said she'd rather just stay at the house and sleep. I told Derek that I was leaving and that I would be back in 2-ish hours. He works from home. I also told him to check on Sam every once in a while and maybe try to get her to eat something. After stopping at the post office, I realized I forgot my library book that I needed to return, so I went back home to get it. As soon as I walked in the door, I heard moaning coming from mine and Derek's bedroom. I immediately knew what was happening, and my heart completely broke in that moment. I wasn't completely sure what to do, but I ended up deciding to confront them, so I walked to the bedroom and opened the door and began yelling at them both. Sam started having an anxiety attack and ran to the bathroom, while Derek kept apologizing profusely. I asked him what the hell was happening. He told me that he made himself and Sam some lunch, and they began talking about Becca and shared some memories, and then Sam ended up kissing him, and he didn't pull back, and then it ended with them in our bed. They're begging me to understand that it was just grief that caused them to become intimate, and that they both made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I love this man, and I love Sam. I'm heartbroken that they did this to me and put me in this position. I feel so stuck. Let's check in with the audience for some relevant comments. First up, that would be a hard no for me. I understand grieving, but how is this excusing cheating? What happens next time he is sad? Edit, I misspoke when I said sad. Obviously, this is something beyond devastating. I still don't think it can be used as an excuse. The op replies, I don't want to excuse his cheating. I think I want to divorce him, but I'm anxious about doing it right after we lost Becca. Someone else adds, probably together. Do you both own the home? If it's in your name, change the locks. Stay strong and don't listen to his excuses. I'm so sorry this happened to you during such a difficult time. The op replies, exactly what I was thinking if I'm being honest. And yes, we both own it. When I told him to leave, he kept saying sorry and then said that he would leave and respect me wanting him gone for a while. The next comment says, are you seeing a therapist perhaps? You're dealing with a lot right now. It might be useful. The op replies, yes, I'm in therapy. I've been with my therapist for other things for the last 3 years. She's been very helpful. I saw her yesterday and was able to figure some things out. Well, talk about turning grief into a threesome. Looks like Sam took sharing memories a bit too literally. I mean, who knew mourning could be so arousing? Derek and Sam figured the best way to cope with loss was to dive headfirst into each other's arms. Classic move, right? And the best part, they're trying to sell you the grief-induced intimacy excuse. Sure, because nothing says, I miss our daughter like getting it on with your ex's new wife. Update 1, May 11th, 2024. I decided that I'm filing for divorce. I can't ever trust Derek again. It sucks because we had an amazing relationship, I thought. He's always been great, so this was a complete shock to me. Last night, Derek came over to talk. He confessed to a lot. Turns out it wasn't their first time having sex like most people thought. They've been having sex since 3 months before Becca died. I'm completely shocked and heartbroken. Sam also reached out last night and thanked me for everything I've done for her and told me she was sorry. I didn't respond. I blocked her. I did so much for Sam and considered her a friend, so this hurts a lot more than I can handle. This is all too much. As hard as this is going to be, I need to leave Derek and cut them both out of my life. I'm ready to do so. I am done. Also, some people are saying I deserve this because I should have known better than to let Sam into our home around Derek. But you need to understand that I'm a giving person. I trust people more than I should. I truly thought Sam was an amazing person. I know it's unusual to become friends with your husband's ex-wife, but it's just how it went for us, and I shouldn't be blamed for what happened. Thank you to everyone who commented nice things and for the kind messages. You've all been helpful during this insanely difficult time. I appreciate it. A couple more comments from the audience. Out of curiosity, what are his excuses for cheating? Those two are going to be in a world of hurt. Once the guilt settles in, they're going to be asking themselves why it had to be Becca, and will eventually come to the conclusion that it's their punishment for what they've done to you. I can pretty much guarantee you that. The op replied, he told me they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. It seems so icky to me. How can he vent about our struggles like that and then go and have sex with Sam? It's just awful of him. I don't understand it. Editor's note, remove the first half of the update as it was a rehash of update 1. So Derek's been multitasking, huh? Juggling both you and Sam like some sort of twisted love triangle. Three's a crowd, they say, but apparently Derek and Sam missed the memo. And Sam, oh Sam, thanks you for everything and apologizes. Gee, thanks for the moment amidst the wreckage of your marriage. Maybe she'll send a fruit basket next. Update 2, May 13th, 2024. I'm getting a lot of questions about some things, so I figured I'd answer a few of them. Have I told anyone about what happened besides my mom? Yes, I told a few friends and family members. Most of them are supportive of my decision and aren't speaking to Derek. Where is Derek staying? Currently he's staying in a hotel. Our friends refuse to let him stay with them. He's lost a lot of people due to his awful decisions. Has he tried fighting me on getting a divorce? Yes, he begged me not to file for divorce, but when I told him I needed him to just let me go and that I was too exhausted to fight him on this, he let it be and agreed to get a divorce. Why isn't Derek staying with Sam? He told me he didn't want to continue to hurt me, so he told Sam he was done with her for good and that they have no reason to speak to each other anymore. I have no idea if that'll last and if they'll just end up together, but I truly don't care what they do anymore. I just want peace. What was Derek's excuse for cheating? He told me that they accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. Disgusting of them both, I know. Feel free to ask anything else and I'll try to answer. Thank you everyone for your support and advice. Now for some relevant comments. The op on what happened to Becca. The op replies, it was very sudden. She died in a car accident when she was with one of her friends and her friend's parents. The op on her husband's parents being supportive or not, and if they know about his cheating. I get along with Derek's mom very well, but he's also a mama's boy, so it's kind of complicated. She will always be there for him. He'd stay with her if she didn't live across the country. She knows what he did and told me she had a talk with him, but said that he's still her son and she'd help him with anything if he needed it. I'm thinking I need to cut her out of my life too, which makes me really sad because we were close and talked on the phone almost daily. The op on if she has children with her husband. We've had 6 mixed carriages total. All of them were in the first trimester. Now for some more updates. I just found out that he is staying with Sam and not at the hotel. He told me it's too expensive to stay at a hotel, and Sam is the only one that'll help him right now. I had a feeling this would happen. Just knowing that they are still probably sleeping together hurts my heart. I talked to a lawyer this morning, and we were proceeding with the divorce and Derek agreed to it. It's actually happening, and I feel some relief that he's not fighting me on this. My mom leaves on Sunday. I'm scared to be alone, but I go back to work on Monday, so I'm hoping it'll be a good distraction. I'll keep updating if anything else happens. Thank you everyone. I'm so grateful for you all. Back to some more relevant comments from the anything he says should be taken with a grain of salt. He is not true to his words in going on contact with Sam. The op replies. He texted me this morning after we talked to lawyers and said he just wants to be honest with me. I told him to stop giving me updates on what he's doing in his life and that it's not something I need to know. It seems like he wanted to tell me to hurt me, the op on how she's doing. Thank you. I'm doing a little better today. My mom and I went on some nature walks and went out into the garden this afternoon. That helped. Becca loved gardening with me, so it made me feel closer to her. Hotel? More like Heartbreak Inn, where the only content on her breakfast is a side of regret. And I guess friends in his dictionary means people who ghost you faster than cash were on speed dial. But wait, there's a twist. Derek's decided to shack up with good old Sam after all, because nothing says I'm sorry for cheating like running back into the person you cheated with. Real smooth, Derek, real smooth. And his excuse? Oh, it's a real gem. Stress and miscarriages led to sex with the ex. Ah, the classic stress relief method. Cheat on your wife. Works like a charm, apparently. Becca's diary, May 15th, 2024. I decided to go through some of Becca's stuff today. I just found her diary in a box in the back of her closet. Would it be wrong to read some of it? I feel like it would help me feel closer to her, but part of me feels like it's wrong too. I haven't told Derek that I found it either, and I'm unsure if I should tell him. What would you do? Ask and you'll get some comments back. Op on if she was closer with Rebecca prior to her sudden passing. Becca and I were very close. It felt like she told me anything and everything, but I honestly think all parents feel that way about their kids, so I'm kind of nervous to read it. Just a little update, May 19th, 2024. I figured it's been a few days, so I should give a little update. My mom is leaving in a couple hours, so I'll be alone. I'm kind of nervous about it. She helped me stay distracted and kept me going. I don't know how I'm going to handle her being gone. I go back to work tomorrow, first day back since Becca passed away. I'm looking forward to it though because it'll keep me distracted. Also, I did read some of Becca's diary. It made me love her even more. She was such a sweetheart. I went back a few months and saw that she noticed some weird behavior between Derek and Sam. Didn't mention that she knew of the affair, but she just wrote that she thought it was kind of strange that they all three would hang out more than usual without me. I might read more, but so far I haven't found anything that's disturbing. Just her being a teenager and talking about crushes, fights with friends, happy family memories, etc. Tomorrow, I'm also talking to my lawyer, so I might have more updates on that. Thanks for the continuous love and support, everyone. Last update for a while, May 26th, 2024. Started randomly getting a lot more messages, comments, so I figured I'd do another little last update. My first week back at work went great. I wasn't expecting it to go so well, but thankfully it did. My co-workers were so helpful and patient with me. On Friday night, I decided I didn't want to stay at home all weekend alone, so I decided to drive up to my mom's. It helps I have a 3-day weekend so I can spend more time with her. I'm heading back home tomorrow. Also, for those of you that have messaged me hateful things for reading Becca's diary, I just have to say, you aren't in my shoes right now. Telling me I'm a bad mom because I'm reading her diary is just ridiculous. I learned so much more about her, about how caring and how sweet she is, and it made me love her even more. It's how I'm able to feel so close to her right now. So please don't tell me I'm a bad parent just for trying to get by one of the hardest times in my life. You have no idea what it's like. I don't have much of an update, so this will be it. I'll come back and update once the divorce happens, though. Thank you to those of you that have been nothing but kind and helpful. You help me feel less alone. I'll be forever grateful. Ah, the age-old dilemma to snoop or not to snoop in your dead daughter's diary. Just another day in the life, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to take a peek into the inner workings of their offspring's mind, especially when they're not around to stop you? Too soon. And lo and behold, what do we find? Teenage crushes, family memories, and oh, a sprinkle of suspicious behavior between Derek and Sam because nothing says quality family time like a love triangle brewing in the background. New update, Sam saw my Reddit post and is threatening to sue me. June 1st, 2024. Sam made a fake Facebook profile to message me and tell me she wants to sue me for telling strangers about what happened. Derek supports her apparently. I don't need this. Am I not allowed to vent about my life to people online? I just want my life to get better. I'm so tired. F you Sam. F you Derek. Edit, Sam is in the comments and messaged me on here too. Blocked her. More additional information from Op on the messages from Sam. No, I just ignored her. It might be an empty threat just to make my life harder, but I'm unsure. Her message said, so I was scrolling TikTok and ended up on an account where they read Reddit posts, and guess whose posts they read? Yours. First you tell friends and family, and then you go to a bunch of strangers and tell them our life story. I can't believe you. It isn't just your business to tell. Becca would be so disappointed in you. Be prepared, because I think I'm going to be suing you for this. This was no one else's business. You did this to yourself. Remember that. I'm actually baffled. She thinks Becca would be disappointed in me. What the F? The all threat of a lawsuit, the ultimate I'm mad at you, and I want you to know it move, because nothing says let's resolve our issues like mature adults, like threatening legal action over a Reddit post. I mean, forget about resolving things like civilized human beings, right? Let's just skip straight to the courtroom drama. But hey, who needs a support system when you've got strangers on the internet? Am I right? Because clearly venting online is a crime punishable by legal action. And Sam's little guilt trip about Becca being disappointed, classic manipulation tactic, because nothing says I'm a victim here like dragging a deceased child into the mix. What do you make of all this? What would you have done? Do you blame her for posting on Reddit? Thank you for joining us today on our space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. Story 7. Hey, time for the out-of-this-world story from our space. Divorce, the ultimate jewelry heist, where the only thing she took was fool's gold. Today, on our space, Opai's cheating wife found herself in a real-life romance novel. But little did she know he wrote the final chapter. My wife thought cheating was fun. She came back to me begging for help. I, 30 male, and my wife, 27 female, have been married to each other for 4 years now. We consider it that we got married to each other rather young, or at least she was pretty young. But it really felt right to the both of us at the time. We dated for about a year and some months and change. And that was enough for us. We knew that we were meant to be, though, with some recent developments. I'm not sure if we truly were. I have a pretty solid job. My brothers and I operate a jewelry business together. We built it out of nothing, and we've gotten it to be very profitable levels, which is always something to be proud of. I know people say business with family can be very hard. But honestly, for us, it's been a dream. We've never been the kind of siblings to butt heads with each other constantly. So your mileage may definitely vary. On the other hand, my wife opened a cute cafe where people could come to get pastries, drink cups of coffee, and read books. She's always been big on books, and is one of those people who proudly makes reading their personality. Those people annoyed the crap out of me before I met her. But yeah, I'm a hypocrite, bite me, to be honest. I was pretty enthralled with the idea, because I was trying to support her, so I've done her favors by helping her pay the rent on the place she's using for the cafe. It's pretty expensive because it's in a more swanky part of town, but the business is getting profitable, at least without rent to worry about, and that was enough to put a smile on my face now. I think that's the background that you need. Here's where the actual story starts. I can't remember exactly when, but I think it was about in March that she came to me to tell me about how there was this new man that showed up in the cafe, according to her. He was very handsome. I was a cure person, and I found that the two of us can objectively talk about somebody's attractiveness without it becoming a big issue. However, there was something different about the way she kept going on about this guy. Supposedly, he seemed like the kind of masculine hero that she reads about in the kind of smut that women like to read. Yes, she's into those kinds of books, too, as all book talk type women seem to be, and I'll never get it because it seems to be the cheesiest form of romance that gets them going anyway. She went on for a bit about this guy before it ended, but I will admit that the words she chose when she spoke about him were almost like how she would talk about the cold Russian hitman who fell for some woman in the laundry room of their apartment building. No, I didn't make that up. That's from an actual book that she finds interesting. Now, that was it for the day. But she let me know that he came in the next day, and they spoke at length. According to her, he was from Serbia, and he used to work as a car dealer, but he decided to come to the United States and search for a better life. It was taking him some time to get back on his feet and get his bearings, but he was looking for work at dealerships. Nearby because that was the work he knew how to do best. I learned in about 10 minutes that he was tall, blonde, handsome dressed. Well, and obviously spoke with an accent apparently. He loved to read books set in the Wild West, and was a big fan of fantasy like The Lord of the Rings. She always tells me a lot about her cafe's patrons, so it's not like this was out of the ordinary, but once again, there was a really flowery verbiage at play, and it seemed like she was almost fetishizing him in a way at a point he wasn't novel to her anymore, so she stopped talking about him at length, but it was clear that he was still a regular at her cafe, and it felt a lot better to me knowing that he didn't seem to be worthy of long spiels every evening any longer. Hell, I even popped into her cafe one afternoon to bring her lunch, and I saw a guy sitting in the corner who fit the exact description. I was 100% sure that it was him, and admittedly, he was a handsome guy. His name was Ivan according to her now. It's about at this point that things start to get a bit wild. There was a night that she got back home, and she had a goofy smile on her face, so I asked her what was up. She said Ivan had walked her home, and they had talked a lot about books on the way back. She admitted that he asked to take her out on a date, but she informed him that she was married and wouldn't be able to do that. She said he was really apologetic, held my hand tenderly, and then said good night, and left. I remember asking her why that was making her smile so widely, and her response was, "It's like something out of a book." I won't lie, that part pissed me off, because it was like she was romanticizing every single interaction she was having with Ivan, and I knew that because he was a patron of her cafe, there was no way they wouldn't keep interacting on almost a daily basis. I didn't want to seem insecure, and she could have decided to tell him that she didn't have a man. So again, I felt there was no need to talk about things despite the fact that I felt some kind of way about it. It was just my feelings I had to get over. Right. It eventually became evident to me that this wasn't the case when my wife came home about a week later with a bouquet of flowers that she promptly put into a vase. According to her, it was a gift from Ivan. Nothing special, he said that he bought a bunch of for a co-worker. He has a job now. By the way, it was her birthday, and he just thought it'd be nice to get me some, because you always see is how hard I'm working. I felt my head get hot as she said that because she was trying to paint the situation like she was a schoolgirl who didn't understand when someone liked her. I asked her straight up whether she could tell that Ivan really liked her. She said it was obvious, especially after he asked her out, but she believed that the flowers were just a friendly thing, and that had me baffled because if you're a guy you probably don't get flowers for a girl that rebuffed you even if it was because she was married as a friendly thing. He was still trying to get in her pants, or maybe now trying to get in her pants and leave all the rest of the lovey-dovey stuff out of it. He was having an easy time with his advances, so at the time I knew that he wasn't about to stop anytime soon. I was right because 2 days later, my wife came back home relatively later than usual. I think it was almost 2 hours later. And she didn't tell me that she was going to be late. It's not like this was the first time in existence that she would come home late. So I gave her 2 calls which weren't picked up before deciding to give it time. But before I could call a third time, she showed up at home in a distinctly bubbly mood. You won't believe the evening I had. That was the first thing out of her mouth before she went into a whole spiel about how she had shown Ivan where the museum was, and then they went to get a slice of American pizza, because he had never had it before and always saw it in the movies. Then they walked and talked and ate pizza, and a bunch of other crap I really didn't care about, but I let her finish, and when she was done, I asked her, "Are you attracted to Ivan?" She acted very shocked and offended and said, of course she wasn't, that the only person she was attracted to in that way was me, that she was just trying to welcome somebody who was in an unfamiliar country and had no friends or close people around him to show him around and answer his questions. I wasn't really convinced by all this, so I told her straight up that she had to stop seeing Ivan. Yeah. That caused a big fight. Quite unsurprisingly, she talked about how I was being insecure, how there was nothing there, how I should stop feeling threatened, and a lot more nonsense. I was pissed, but I was able to keep my wits about me and stop my temper from raging. I stood my ground, though, and told her that she should stop anything extracurricular. With Ivan, it was fair if he came by her cafe because he was a customer, But things weren't supposed to go beyond that point. I told her to imagine what she would do in my shoes if some Serbian girl came to buy a bracelet. And I said her taking her walking around town, and all that according to her I'd understand, but I think we all know that's a lie, don't we? Long story short. I slept on the couch, no one is shocked there, but the good thing is that I stopped hearing about Ivan, and all his drama, which was enough for my mental health again. I knew that she would be interacting with him at her cafe, but there was only so much that could happen there, and it seemed pretty sure that nothing was going on because she was heading back home at the regular time each night, which was good by me. I became very suspicious when I walked into my wife's cafe randomly one afternoon, and she wasn't there, neither was Ivan though. I couldn't have been sure that he would have been there at that time anyway, so that didn't mean much, but it didn't mean much that she wasn't there, because that was very unusual. I thought of sticking around until she came back or asking one of her employees where she had gone, but I decided not to make a big deal of it. It was when I was getting back into my car from across the street that I saw her and Ivan coming up the street, arms interlocked. It took every single ounce of strength in me not to run across the street and beat the crap out of the guy and cuss her out, but somehow I stayed in the car, watched them walk into the cafe, and I drove off. That happened yesterday, and I've really struggled to process it. I wanted to confront her about it as soon as she got home, but I think there's a lot of power in knowing something that the other person doesn't know you know. It'll make it easier for me to see through other lies that might be told. Case in point, when she got back home, I asked her how her day was, and she described a pretty plain day without any mention of going somewhere. I have no idea where with Ivan, so this is why I'm here. Should I confront her straight up, or should I try it to find out more of the truth before that point? I'm tending towards the latter, because I'm starting to think that there might be something going on under my nose, and I feel like confronting her might result in all the chances of finding the truth dissolving. Let me know what you guys think. Please. Your wife's coffee shop sounds adorable, a haven for book lovers and caffeine addicts alike. And then enter Ivan, the Serbian heartthrob straight out of a romance novel, tall, handsome, and with an accent thicker than a Russian novel. I mean, who wouldn't be intrigued by this real-life character? Your wife's enthusiastic description of Ivan were almost romantic. I get it, we all have our literary crushes, but seeing her swoon over Ivan like he's Fabio on the cover of a bodice ripper might make anyone's blood boil, especially when she starts comparing him to her smutty book heroes. Ivan's charming advances, and just a friendly gesture, bouquet of flowers, right? Because nothing says platonic friendship like romantic flowers from a guy who's been rebuffed. I'm sure Ivan's next friendly gesture involves a candle at dinner in a horse-drawn carriage, and the late night walk, shared pizza, and giggly museum visits. It sounds like Ivan is checking off boxes on a rom-com date montage. Your wife's reaction, sparkling eyes, and all probably didn't help ease your concerns. Her insistence that there's nothing to worry about feels like those horror movie scenes where the clueless character says it's just the wind right before getting axed. Update 1. Hey guys, it's me, the guy from that post about the wife with the cafe and the Serbian man. Well, I'm back with a pretty big update. Let's talk about it, because I found a lot. It took me a bit to gain the courage, but I decided at a point that I had to find out the truth, no matter what it would cost. I have never been the kind of person to smile upon the idea of checking your partner's phone. But in this case, I knew I had to put whatever moral conundrums I had aside and do it, so I did it at the first chance that I got, which was while she was asleep. Unsurprisingly, she had Ivan in a messaging app, and they had been talking a lot. It was WhatsApp, so it was easy for me to export the entire conversation to a text file, which I sent to my phone from her phone. I made sure to delete the evidence, of course. I looked through her gallery and found a few pictures of them smiling together in public places, but nothing extra incriminating. I sent those on my phone too. Again, evidence was deleted. It took me about 5 minutes to do all of that, and I put her phone back where it belonged after that. I did all the reading on my phone, where it was a lot less suspicious in case she woke up suddenly, and boy did I see things that made my head spin. Here's a transcript of one part of the conversation that you might find as appalling as I did. It came after a point where they were discussing some book that my wife had recommended to him. Let's call my wife Clarice, instead of her actual name. In a way, the main characters reminded me of us Clarice, yes. That's what I thought too, the big mysterious hunk, and the artsy girl who was torn between him and her boyfriend in a message right after that, and a lot of steamy sex scenes. That part especially reminds me of us, I agree. The sex is always good. But in your case, it's a husband, a stupid laugh emoji after that laugh emojis from Clarice. Yes, and I think that's what makes it even more exciting and fun. It feels so wrong. I've never cheated before, but I can't say I properly regret it. It is wrong, but that's what makes it so hot, yep. And I never want this to end. It drove me insane. It was 2 a.m. and I left the house to go on a walk because I couldn't stay behind her at that point. I would have done something crazy. I was almost sure of it. I feel like I walked around the town aimlessly for 5 hours. But by the time I got back, it was only 3:10 a.m. She was still sleeping. Do you know what it is like to find out you're being cheated on, but then to find out your wife is ridiculing you by actually enjoying doing everything behind your back? She was basically reveling in my ignorance of the situation. And that was the part that drove me over the edge. Not like cheating was going to be forgiven anyway. When I got back, she was still sleeping, so I grabbed her phone, jumped to that part of her conversation with Ivan, and took a video of it on her phone. I needed to make it very clear that there was no doctoring going on here. It was clear that Clarice felt like she was living out one of her stupid books, but it was absolutely despicable that I had to be a victim in all of it. She has no idea that I know this, but the divorce is cooking up. There's really no other way for this to go. I also need to see her go down. I need to see Ivan go down. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I need both of them to hurt, and I need them to hurt badly. Honestly, anyone in your shoes would have done the same. Reading that chat must have felt like being punched in the gut repeatedly. The whole reminds me of us, and steamy scenes, part her reveling in the excitement of cheating. That's a special kind of betrayal. Kudos for keeping her cool and going for a walk. If it were me, I'd probably have ended up on the evening news. But you handled it like a pro. You even took a video of the chat for proof. Nicely done. Now, you've got the smoking gun. So divorce is on the horizon, and honestly, that's the best route. Clarice clearly thinks she's living out some kind of torrid romance novel. But she's about to get a reality check. As for Ivan, I hope that he enjoys his time in Fantasyland, because you're about to drop a reality bomb on both of them. Update 2: It's been done. And it was glorious. This is the final saga of the Serbian man Ivan and the book-loving, treacherous, cheating wife Clarice. In this whole thing, they had no idea. They should have been a lot more worried about me than they were. Let me rush through the boring parts of the story. Clarice went to work one day, and I parked across the street in an Uber. I watched as the process server walked into the cafe and handed her the divorce papers in a very public manner that was very pleasing. And after that, we drove off. I went to work, had a great day, and there wasn't a single message or missed call from Clarice by the end, which was very pleasing to me. She knew she had been made out, and there wasn't anything begging was going to do. At least that's how I saw it. Well, that night, she came back crying rivers. It's not pouring out of her nose. She looked like an absolute wreck. Honestly, I felt a twinge of sadness seeing her, like that. Blame it on the fragments of love that were left, but it didn't last long. She kept asking what she did wrong. Was it Ivan? Was it Ivan? I realized she didn't know how much I knew, and she must have tried to figure it out if she had leaks in her operation. Before she couldn't figure out what I knew, I couldn't tell whether it was better to tell her I knew about Ivan or not. But in the end, I made a promise. I told her I saw her, and I've been walking arm in arm that day, and I had been holding it in, but I didn't let her in on anything else at that point. She suddenly got emboldened and started half begging, half calling me stupid. According to her, there was no reason to divorce her over that. Yes, she was wrong for still seeing him, but no, there was nothing happening between them, and I was being insecure. I was being jealous. She couldn't tell whether to grovel or insult me. Apparently, in the end, I told her to get out of my house, which she did. That's where to the actual divorce phase. That part was loads of fun for me. I have a lot more money than her, which in a divorce means there's a lot more to lose. But it also means there's a lot more to spend on good lawyers, which I made sure to do. When you get a divorce, get a good lawyer. I promise you all that it is worth it, because not only did I have a lot of pictures of the two of them after a point where I had mentioned my concerns about it, but I had the text messages to clearly demonstrate the infidelity. On top of that, my rock star of a lawyer was able to point out transactions in our joint account that seemed to have been spent on Ivan. He aligned the dates on some transactions with dates in the entire text message transcript, where he thanked her for certain things. And it became very clear that she was spending our money on her Serbian lover. Boy, the lawyer did good work of painting her like a gold digger too, which was fun to watch. For me, she fought her best. But honestly, there was nothing to point out for me. I am not a perfect guy, but I definitely don't have any divorce-worthy flaws by the time the divorce was over. I really had everything that I needed. I kept my house, I kept my car, and because of that pretty notable infidelity, and the fact that I had set her up with a money-making venture, there was no alimony requested of me. Love you, Judge. She did get to keep the car that I bought for her. I didn't feel I needed to stress myself about that, and it made it easier to take what I took when she didn't leave the divorce entirely empty-handed. Now this is my favorite part. It was hard for me to get back at Ivan. It was very hard, but one day he was walking out of the cafe, and I followed him down the road. And around the corner, I called his attention and introduced myself, and slugged him square in the jaw. It hurt like crazy. But I busted his lip and knocked him to the ground with it, and he looked very shocked. I wasn't looking for a street fight, but I would have taken one if it came. I think he realized he had no moral high ground on this one, because he stood up and left after that. It felt good. I wish I could have done more because he knew he was messing with a married woman, but that was enough for me, and probably all I could have realistically gotten without a felony charge. And then Clarice. You know, that rent that I was paying for her, it was due again. And because she had her cafe in such a nice part of town, it was expensive. It was usually due on May 1st, but it was only towards the end of May that she came to me crying on the phone saying that she needed to pay the rent for the cafe badly, and she didn't have the money for it. She begged and begged and begged. But I told her to sell the car to get the funds for it. Before I hung up the phone, she called several times throughout that week. But I didn't pick up the phone. Spoiler, I found out. She sold the car when she called me to start cursing me out. She said it was evil that I couldn't help her at the very lowest. I told her it was evil to think that it was fun and exciting to cheat on me. She couldn't say anything to that. I'm waiting for May next year to see how she struggles with rent. If the gods of their way, she'll lose the cafe too, especially without access to my bookkeeper any longer. It's been sweet. Honestly, I'm newly single with a lot of money and a lot of satisfaction. I won't say that the divorce and betrayal and infidelity didn't hurt like hell, because it did, but you can only move forward, right? That's what I'm going to do. Thanks to you all for sticking around and for your words of encouragement and advice. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll never have to write a post again. See ya. Clara's coming home crying and snotting everywhere. Priceless. I can almost picture her trying to toggle between groveling and calling you stupid. She really thought she could spin the arm-in-arm story into some harmless, friendly stroll like, oh, no, honey, he's just my walking buddy, right? Because that's totally normal. And the divorce, he played that like a maestro, bringing in a rockstar lawyer and nailing her with the evidence, plus those transactions aligning with her little love messages. That's courtroom gold. Watching her get painted as a gold digger must have been pure satisfaction, keeping the house, the car, and avoiding alimony. That's the jackpot. And Clarice selling her car to pay rent, that's just poetic justice. Her calling you evil, hilarious. She had no light to stand on. Here's hoping she loses the cafe next year to Karma's a relentless companion. So here, you are newly single, loaded with cash, and a satisfying victory under your belt. Surely it hurt like hell, but you've come out on top. Hats off to you, and thanks for sharing this epic tale. What do you think of the Opie's revenge? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on our space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Tune in next time.